podcast of the week where fucking nerdy for our own podcast.
Hello and welcome to PEEP 199. That's not PEP 199. This is the extra for PEP 199. It's like a part 2 to PEP 199. So if you haven't seen PEP 199 or listened to it, you should do that first. This is the part 2. As you're about to hear, I've got a whole bunch of stuff, extra information for what we talked about in PEP 199. This is PEEP, the extra.
Not PEP.
No.
You're listening to PEEP.
That's right. And we've got a great interview I'm very excited to present for you. But before we get to that, I want to, well, first of all, I've got a very quick correspondence, which is a correction from Aussie Uncle Phil. Aussie says, I can't stand Trump, but at the start, that's a good start. But at the start of the podcast, you showed Trump's interview about the government expenses. If you watch that interview, Trump isn't talking about the government debt. We say he was talking about debt. He's talking about government expenditure, like buying tanks for the military. That's not the government debt. That's services. He can negotiate bills, but it's stupid. He gets crap service because nobody wants to work for him, like his lawyers. He doesn't stiff the banks, and he isn't talking about stiffing the holders of Treasury debt. So what Aussie Uncle Phil was saying is we took that grab, and when he's talking about paying bills, and we said he's talking about paying off the debt, but it's different. So what I want to do is I want to show you the actual grab, and then you can judge for yourselves. So here is the grab.
I can spend an hour finding the outrageous amounts of money being spent abroad like USAID, and I just want to mention a couple, but I'm going to scroll it.
Well, I guess at a high level, I think it's what the president mentioned earlier, which is that in order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring.
But we were talking about this yesterday. I could give me thousands of bills. I could pick any one of them.
Yes, exactly.
But I could take all 1,000. And let's say it's a bill for $5,000, just $5,000, and it's done by some bureaucrat. And if he would say, I'll give you 3, I don't want to pay you 5, it's too high, I'll give you 3. But they don't do that. If a guy sends in a bill for $5,000, they pay $5,000. They expect to be cut. Everybody expects to be cut. When you send in a bill, you expect to be cut. They send in the bill higher for the most part. This is true with lawyers, legal fees. When they send in legal fees, I can cut. I wish I had the time. I would save so, but I could cut these bills in half, much better than half. But you offer people a much lower number because they actually put fat. I'm not even saying it's like a way of business. They put more on because they expect to be negotiated. When you send in a bill to the government, there's nobody to negotiate.
Yes.
You send in a bill for $10,000 and they send you a check back for $10,000. If you would call them and said, we'll give you 5. No, I need more than 5. We'll give you 5. I'm not going to pay any more than 5. Make it 6. No, I'm not going to make it 6. And you'll settle for $5,500. You've just cut the bill almost in half. And it took like 2 minutes. But none of that's
Someone call that the art of the deal?
But that's caring. No, it's not even the art of the deal. It's caring.
I think Aussie Uncle Phil's absolutely right. I think I screwed that up. I think that I don't want to admit this on air, but sometimes I multitask.
That's why we admitted it on PEEP.
That's right. Sometimes I do multitask. Sometimes I'll have a Fox News interview in the background, say, at work while I am typing away, possibly writing my notes for PEP. And I'll go, oh yeah, I'm going to use that. And I just throw that in there. And obviously I didn't hear the question properly. I must have just tuned in halfway through Elon Musk rabbiting on the bit I just white flashed out. You're absolutely right, Uncle Phil. Now, we've gotten underneath Uncle Phil's correspondence, there are some other commenters saying, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? You're talking about paying things off. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I agree with Uncle Phil. I think it is different. I made a whole song and dance on PEP saying that he doesn't understand how debt works. You can't just negotiate with your treasury treasury bond holders and your security holders. But he wasn't talking about that. So I just want to put a correction in there right at the top. I like when there's corrections. They go as early as possible. Now, like I said, this is a part 2 of PEP, and we are introducing a new segment which doesn't have a sting yet. Nudge, nudge.
Subtle.
Which I'm going to call Bits and Peepers. And the idea is all the bits and pieces from the PEP 2 or 3 days ago where either there is something which I think we got wrong or dropped the ball, or there's been extra information that I read. Even if the extra information was out before PEP, I hadn't read it at that point in time. And I've read it since, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is relevant to what we just talked about in part 1. So I might as well bring it up now rather than waiting 3 weeks to drop it in some future PEP.
Yeah, seems fitting.
So let's get into it. First of all, the gold card. Dave and I spoke in PEP about Trump's new policy for the gold card visa.
I think Dave introduced you to it at the
That's
time.
right, because I hadn't read about it because that happened on Wednesday night, and I was a day behind as always. We spoke about it, just for those who don't remember or haven't watched PEP. You should watch PEP. Essentially, Trump's policy is to sell green cards for $5 million a pop. That's what the gold card is. Now, Dave was suggesting that Trump could sell 10 million of them. And I made the point that if that's what he was hoping to do, he would have massively overshot because the deficit is only $1.6 trillion. And that would have raised $50 trillion, which is a bit much.
Bit overshooting.
Yeah, and Dave, his maths was just a disaster zone. Even though Dave got his maths wrong, Trump got his maths right. When I actually looked at the Oval Office presser where he talked about it, Trump actually specifically got the maths right. So let's just be fair to Trump here.
5 million times 10 million equal that math?
Yeah,
or?
that math equals, the math was, 5 million times 10 million equals 50 trillion. He actually specifically said the number. So it was our flaw, the maths, not Trump's. But my point still stood about he's massively overshot here, except for I didn't know what he was talking about because this is the first time I heard it when I was talking when I was talking to Dave. Turns out Trump was on top of that as well. He actually was referring to eliminating the $37 trillion debt.
Entirely.
Now that's if we're being honest, he wasn't even trying to do that. He was, like Trump often does, throwing numbers around. And then saying, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? Just imagine we could even do that. Just imagine we could even do that. And just going to more and more ridiculous numbers while he's trying to sell it, right?
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. And if anything, his main bit of salesmanship was actually about 1 million cards, not 10 million cards. And he had it on the 10 million as an afterthought. Anyway, I've described it. Why don't you just watch it?
And we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion. Wow. And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But
so he got the maths right, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much as I described, I think. But the big takeaway from that clip is I really want to have a Howard Latnick. That's the Commerce Secretary staying behind him going, wow. Lockie. Now, I know.
Oh, okay.
I know you've done an excellent job at just sitting there and every now and then nodding and especially poignant moments going, you've really mastered that. But do you think you could throw in a wow every now and then as well?
I'll see what I can do. Wow. Yeah, sure.
Regardless of what Trump's intending, though, they have hollowed out the EB5 visa to create this gold card. That was something Dave got spot on. And if legally they are allowed to do that, and I say if because I'm not 100% sure they are, like they've really ignored the law and just totally reinterpreted what this EB5, because Trump just can't make up a new visa card. He's taken an already existing Visa card, not Visa card, it's not a credit card. He's taken an already...
Not as far as he's concerned.
That's true. This one, if anything, is a Visa card. He's taken an already existing Visa category and he's just hollowed it out, much like he did with DOGE, and replaced it with something completely different. Now, can he get away with that legally? I don't know. Looking at the legislation, it seems super vague. So I reckon you might be able to get away with it. There's a lot of executive discretion in that particular bit of legislation. But one thing you can't get away with is that legislation specifically says there's no wriggle room here that there's only a limit of 10,000 of these EB5 visas available per year.
Wow.
Which means, very well done. Very well done, Lucky. He's really got the hang of it. Which means that there's going to be a limit of 10,000 gold cards per year, which is $50 billion a year if they can get rid of them. Now, yeah, they might actually sell that many. I don't know. I have no idea. But that's the limit, $50 billion a year. So there you go. That's an
slightly short of
50
what they
trillion.
need.
Yeah, but look, that's
still money.
That's why we have bits and peepers to throw in this extra information.
Very
on.
nice.
Yes. Gitmo update. We spoke in the last PEEP about how maybe not everyone in Gitmo was actually the worst of the worst.
Ah, yes.
Maybe they just have a tattoo of Michael Jordan. Well, according to Trump's own declarations in court, which came out after that PEEP, 39% of the detainees sent to Gitmo so far have been deemed low threat. Low threat by the Trump administration.
That's bad.
Some of them have not only never broken a law that we know of, that the Trump administration knows of, but also didn't even cross the border illegally. They requested legally asylum at a port of entry in exactly the way you're meant to do. They were allowed in by the Biden administration. They were going through the motions and waiting for their court date like you're meant to. They did nothing wrong whatsoever, had committed no crimes, and they are now in Gitmo. So there we go.
That's just, oh man. Dude, is that just some? Is there like a percentage for that? Or
yeah,
is
we don't
it-
know the exact numbers.
Sure. Okay.
We don't know the exact numbers. We know some.
Okay.
Yeah. We know
Well,
that
that's
applies
too
to some
many.
people. Yes, that's true. I agree. Okay. Musk email bits and peepers. I actually, we talked about this at length, the Musk email, for the 5 things you did last week. And we were speculating about whether this might be an AI thing, whether he might be trying to feed an AI program with this data. First of all, what we should be clear about, I did already say this, but I just want to put more evidence to you or more information to you. I was very clear that I was of the view that what Elon Musk was saying was not true. What he was saying was they were trying to suss out ghost employees, people who claimed to be employees but actually were either frauds or dead or using someone else's name. And I said at the time, a ghost employee would have access to the email account if they're getting paid, and they could easily comply. Through an email. You want to see them face to face if you want to expose them, not get them to send an email.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Also, Elon Musk loudly publicizing that this was to catch ghost employees. If it actually was trying to catch ghost employees.
Not a great way to catch people who...
Yeah. Don't alert people to the test but while the test is ongoing.
But it's a red herring. Yeah.
Yeah. So and especially a test which is easily passed by someone
that
you're
he
trying to
himself
catch.
said would take 5 minutes.
Yes, exactly. So that was what I said last week. Why I didn't believe Elon Musk. But also they've now turned around and done the same thing for the second week in a row. If you're trying to catch ghost employees, you're not going to do it twice in a row.
They asked, "What did you do this week?"
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, again.
What did I do this week? Tried to figure out what I was supposed to do last week.
Yeah.
That's the first bullet point that hopefully 500,000 of them submitted.
It's a good call, actually. Yeah, you're right. I could go on about this a bit more, but this is just bits and peepers. So I just want to note, that's a key bit of information that Musk is full of shit. The fact he's going around again. He's obviously not trying to catch out frauds. But also, it turns out that according to Wired, at least, engineers at DOGE have been messing around with an artificial intelligence program called AutoRIF, or Automated Reduction in Force. Apparently, it has the capability to automatically generate lists of government employees, ranking them in order of how subject they are to being fired. So there you go. It seems to me like a little bit of a smoking gun. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the two are a coincidence. I should say, there's no doubt they've been using this software. DOGE employees have been editing the code in the OPM system. That's been observed, and there are screenshots showing this.
Oh, my goodness.
So anyway, so it lends its support, at the very least, for the idea that Musk is creating data for AI to sort through for the purposes of firing people.
We knew that this would happen I remember when AI started, everyone's like, this is going to get used to figure out who's going to get fired. That's fantastic in terms of being the worst.
There's a lot of stiff competition for being the worst at the moment.
Okay, well, hit me.
I was speculating about how this could potentially be part of an intentional attempt to demoralize federal workers.
Yes, you did.
Like I was just throwing out speculation here. I was just saying, like, maybe it's about AI. Maybe it's just trying to piss off federal workers. Because I'm not talking about, it's so hard to fill out a form with 5 things you did last week. Oh, poor federal workers. I don't mean that. I mean, obviously it's not hard to do, but it's the lack of trust. It's the shadow games. It's the misinformation. It's the
Donald Trump making SpongeBob memes about you.
Yeah, it's a mockery. It's the you think there's one thing happening, and then all of a sudden it's another thing happening. And are they telling the truth now, or are they not? It's psychological warfare. It's not about the 5 things. It's about messing with people's heads, which is not just happening here. It's happening in a million different things at the moment for the federal workforce. Now, there was an old quote doing the rounds from Russell Vought, however you say his name, who was the head of Project 2025, you might have heard of that, and is now the Office of Management and Budget Chair and also a Musk ally. And this quote is from last year. But it certainly sheds light on a mindset, which is what I was going for when I was just describing to you. Last year, Vought said, "We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected.
Okay.
When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that the EPA can't do all of the rules against our energy industry because they have no bandwidth financially to do so. We want to put them in trauma."
He's used the word trauma twice there.
Yeah, that's an important part, I feel, of what he's trying to connote.
When you said psychological warfare, I was like, warfare's a bit big, but traumatically affected, put them in trauma. You can't. That's
right.
Yeah.
And so look, and Vought, like, whether Trump is mates with him or not, I don't know. Musk is. 100% is. We know that for a fact. So this is not some rando. This is a confederate. I do use that word advisedly. A confederate of Musk. So I do think that's probably an insight into the mindset. And as you say, it ain't a cheery one. It's not a sunny disposition. Anyway. And if that is the case, of course, it's the word I used last week was on PEP was pretty scummy. I stand by that. Pretty scummy.
Yeah.
Also, like I said on PEP, that could backfire because everyone knows a federal worker. Yes, some of them are lazy, some of them are pathetic, but most of them are just like other workers.
Yeah.
And if you know them and you're friends with them or you're related to them or you are them and they are a wreck because they are getting screwed with, because trauma is being created for them intentionally, then that could backfire on Elon Musk and in particular on Trump. According to Pew, 55% express a great deal or a fair amount of confidence in federal career employees. That's to 44% who don't. So people like federal workers.
There's also another way it could backfire, which you talk about in the interview coming up later in the episode.
I don't even remember, but sure.
It's the part where you talk about how the people who have options will leave and the
That's
people
true.
who don't
We did talk about that.
won't.
It's a good interview.
Spoilers, but watch it. It's good.
Tease, not spoiler.
True.
Budgets. We talked about the House budget resolution, Dave and I, on
Yes.
PEP. and how it almost certainly had $880 billion of cuts for Medicaid, even though it never specified the word Medicaid. Now, we knew it was a fig leaf. I said that was a fig leaf. I didn't realize just how tiny a fig leaf it was. If anything, it's a small like sample of a fig leaf for like a microscope kind of study. That you put on one of those little rectangular bits of glass with the two bits of metal. One of those fig leaves.
Yeah.
Because they got cut $880 billion from the Commerce and Energy Committee, right? The Commerce and Energy Committee only controls $280 billion worth of spending, which isn't Medicaid. And it spends $839 billion on Medicaid. So it's literally impossible to cut $880 billion from that committee without cutting at least $600 billion from Medicaid, even if you cut every other cent. And if you did do that, you'd have to cut the $200 billion of children's health insurance program, which is probably going to be even less popular than cutting Medicaid. So they're not going to do that. So Medicaid is going to get cut under that budget. There's no doubt about it, regardless of whether they use the word Medicaid or not. Something else I didn't realize, 72 million people are now on Medicaid, which makes it more used than Medicare.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize it's now the biggest entitlement program.
Yeah.
And that means it's got a lot of clients who will be very angry if you take it away. And you know what? Most of them are Republicans, as I said to you during PEP. It's not just the poor either. Most nursing home care is now subsidised by Medicaid.
Right.
They're middle-class people on nursing home, in nursing homes. So it's affecting middle-class people.
Also not going to be happy if it gets cut.
And also their families will not be happy, who will then have to pay for it themselves. If they're middle class, their families are middle class as well. The reason I'm distinguishing between middle class and working class is not because I'm a dickhead. It's because, sadly, a lot of working class people don't vote. Middle class people are more likely to vote. So in terms of costing people votes, costing politicians votes, the middle class is more deadly than the working class. I'm not saying working class don't vote at all, but a smaller percentage of them do.
Fascinating.
Yeah. I tried to be. Wow. And there's a poll I saw as well. This is a good bit and peep. A Heart Research poll found 82% of voters, 82%, including 71% of Trump supporters, consider Medicaid cuts unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
71% of Trump supporters. There was a Kaiser poll last year that found 66% of voters now, say Medicaid should be expanded to cover more people. 66% said that last year. More people. This is going to be tough for some House members. It really is.
How on earth do they think they'll get it? Okay.
They've got to find the money somehow. It's a problem with reconciliation.
Sure.
You got to find the money. So even no matter how much you fudge it, and they're trying to fudge it a lot.
Trying to fudge it.
You can't fudge $3 trillion. You can fudge maybe $1.5 trillion, but $3 trillion, it's just out of the fudge zone. So they've got to cut something.
No, they don't.
Well, they could not have their tax cuts. Yeah. Obviously, that's what I would advocate for. But I'm not a House Republican.
I'll stop.
Yeah. And 538 found voters disapprove of Trump's handling of healthcare by a 27-point margin, making it his, on its own, worst issue. Wow. Like it's outright worst issue. It's not even tied with something else. So Trump may be in trouble with this. This might be an area that Democrats might want to poke their thumbs into, I suspect. At some point in time, we might have to go through some of the ways they can make cuts, because there's cuts and there's cuts. But not now. I'm already 20 minutes into this. Parliamentarian. This is Correspondence. And it's also a bit and peep. Yeah, why not? Hey! There you go. Caine says...
I got it.
Yay! Gitmo says, can Trump just put his own yes person in as a Senate parliamentarian or executive order them out of existence? For those who don't remember, the parliamentarian is the referee for whether Republicans are meeting the demands of reconciliation. As in, there are all these rules to get around 60 votes necessary in the Senate to only need 50 votes. But it's hard to satisfy those rules. They have a referee to decide that. If the referee says no, sorry, you can't pass that bill. If the referee says yes, then you can. So Caine is saying, can Trump just sort her out, just replace her with someone who's more accommodating? Michael asks or says, I think the US parliamentarian serves at the pleasure of the House Speaker. So probably not much of an impediment to President Trump using creative accounting in a reconciliation. Well, Kim, I am going to answer you by answering Michael because it's the same answer. Michael, yes and no. You make the right point, you make the wrong person. The parliamentarian is there at the pleasure of the Senate, not the House. So she can't be gotten rid of from the House, but she can be gotten rid of by the Senate. Furthermore, this is the important bit, because they're not going to want to sack her. Like that would create a 5-alarm fire. But there is a 4-alarm fire available. And that is, if she determines that a provision in a reconciliation bill is out of order, she can be ignored by one person, the Senate's presiding officer. Would you care to guess who the Senate's presiding officer is? J.D. Vance.
Okay.
He'd never do anything dodgy, surely. If you can't trust J.D., who can you? If you can't trust a guy who has changed his name to remove the dots in his initials, who can you trust? Because there's nothing dodgy about that character.
Nothing he'll stop at. Not even his own name.
Well, that is efficiency. To be fair, that's a spirit of DOGE right there, removing the unnecessary dots from his initials.
I've always thought that vowels were woke.
Anyway, the Senate can overrule J.D. Vance, but they require a 3/5 vote, 60 votes. And if you've got 60 votes, they don't need reconciliation. So basically, J.D. Vance can just short circuit the whole thing. So you're going, okay, why'd you waste our time talking about this for 20 minutes before? The reason why is because Majority Leader John Thune has warned Republicans already to respect the parliamentarians' determinations. In fact, the last vice president, despite all the partisanship recently, the last vice president to ignore the parliamentarian was actually Nelson Rockefeller in 1975, in a period of great, relatively a great non-partisanship. That was just after Richard Nixon had been sacked. And they were trying to get along and like that. I mean, they weren't exactly kumbaya, but this was in the shadows of Nixon, after Nixon, when they were trying to sort of reconstruct a little bit. Certainly not as hostile as it is now. He was the last vice president to ignore the parliamentarian. But traditions are made to be broken in this White House. So I'm not putting stock in that. What I'm saying, though, is there's a reason John Thune warned Republicans to respect the parliamentarians' determinations. The reason is because the Republicans don't want the filibuster to end. They are pro-filibuster. They could remove the filibuster anytime they like with a majority vote. You don't need 60 votes to get rid of the filibuster. You only need 51. So it's just a rule change. So at any point in time, they don't need J.D. Vance. At any point in time, they can just vote to end the filibuster. If they want to pass their tax cut and they don't want to go through reconciliation rules, they can just end the filibuster. It's very simple. But they don't want to do that. They want to keep the filibuster because they know it helps them more than it helps Democrats, because Democrats want to do things. Republicans don't want to do things so much. They want to stop things. And so, apart from tax cuts. And so it suits them nicely for the filibuster to be around. So for that reason, they're not going to want J.D. Vance to come over the top, because if J.D. Vance comes over the top and just goes, you know what, right, Do whatever the hell you want. I say that's reconciliation. Let's go. Well, in that case, you can do any bill with reconciliation. J.D. Vance will have set a new precedent, which the Democrats will absolutely follow.
Yeah.
And it'll mean that they effectively ban the filibuster.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that's actually pretty good protection, I think.
It's forward thinking.
The fact that they want to keep the filibuster, they want to keep these impediments, suggests to me they're not going to let J.D. Vance come over the top. And if he does come over the top, they'll ignore him. That is my prediction.
Cut to next PEP when J.D. Vance has jumped over the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like that may be my famous, or I wouldn't say famous last words because I've had so many of these last words. But yeah, like maybe I'm being naive. I'm sure the comments are going to say I'm being naive. But let's say you guys can join me in the comments and you can tell me I'm an idiot and I'll read out your names if you're proven right. And they'll tell you, look, I'm being fair as fair here. I won't read out your names if you're wrong. How about that?
That's nice.
I'll just use you to beat me up if necessary because it's always fun.
Just read out whatever they've shortened their name to.
No abbreviations, though. Sorry, no dots. Not no abbreviation. You can abbreviate, but no dots on an abbreviation as a tribute to the great man, JD himself.
Great man.
Now the bits and pieces. This is actually from Planet America. Sorry, the show whose name doesn't speak itself, or however we refer to it. The show whose name we can't speak. Raising Caine bit. Raising Caine. We didn't mention the sacking of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on PEP at all. But if you did watch Planet America, it's Trump sacked the Joint Chiefs of Staff CQ Brown. Pete Hegseth felt he was too woke. Mainly because of something he did before he was appointed Joint Chiefs of Staff back in 2020. After the George Floyd thing, CQ Brown recorded an earnest BLM video. Lots of people were doing it. At least I don't think he made his avatar a black square. But but apart from that, this was the most 2020 thing you could do. Record an earnest video about BLM. He did. This is an excerpt.
As the commander of Pacific Air Forces, a senior leader in our Air Force, and an African American, many of you may be wondering what I'm thinking about the current events surrounding the tragic death of George Floyd. Here's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how full I am with emotion, not just for George Floyd, but the many African Americans that have suffered the same fate as George Floyd. I'm thinking about protests in my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, the equality expressed in our Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that I've sworn my adult life to support and defend. I'm thinking about a history of racial issues and my own experiences that didn't always sing of liberty and equality. I'm thinking about living in two worlds, each with their own perspective and views. I'm thinking about my sister and I being the only African Americans in our entire elementary school and trying to fit in.
Look, it goes for another 4 minutes. You know what? You get the idea. It's okay. It's not a big deal. The right have never forgiven them for it. Never. But it is Trump's right to sack the Joint Chief of Staff if they want to. It's his right. I'm not saying it's not his right. And he replaced CQ Brown with a guy called General Dan Caine, who was a 3-star general, doesn't have a number of the qualifications required by law to be a Joint Chief of Staff. Yeah. Like, for instance, having served as either a vice chairman, a combatant commander, or a service chief. He's also retired, which is a bit weird. None of that's actually a problem.
Because we hire people on merit.
Exactly. Now, look, Trump can waive any of those requirements. He can waive all the merit requirements he likes. And then, look, to be fair here, no smart assiness, Caine is a serious military guy. He's got a storied career in Joint Special Ops. He wasn't just pulled off the street. He's not Pete Hegseth. Right?
The side of the street.
Yes, with several women around him. He led the anti-ISIS ops in Iraq. He's a real soldier. That's fair enough. The main issue, as far as I could see, and this is why I said on Planet America, why I was more concerned about him is why did Trump pass over 12 more qualified people to get to this guy? And Trump supplied an alarming answer in CPAC in 2024.
So I walked down, and this is where I met General Raisin Caine. And what's your name? General, what's your name? And he gave me his name. What's your name, Sergeant? Yes, sir, and I love you, sir. I think you're great, sir. I'll kill for you, sir. Then he puts on a Make America Great Again hat. You're not allowed to do that, but they did it. I remember I went into the hangar, and there were hundreds of troops. And they're not supposed to do this, but they all put on the Make America Great Again hat. Right? Not supposed to do it. I said, you're not supposed to do that. You know that. They said, it's okay, sir. We don't care. We don't care.
Now, I played that on Planet America, and I noted that Caine's friend denied that ever happened, or in fact that Caine even has a MAGA hat. But here's what's new. John Bolton was on that trip with Donald Trump. And this is what John Bolton says.
You were actually there on that visit and write about this in your book. Is the way that Trump portrays that relationship, because he does talk about him a lot, is it what you witnessed?
Absolutely not. Trump has made up events that didn't happen. We were on the ground in Iraq, I don't know, maybe 3 hours total. And I was either with Trump every minute of that time on the ground, or on one occasion when he and Mrs. Trump went off to meet some of the service members there, I was actually with Caine and General LaCamera, who was the overall commander, as we were writing up the press release about what happened in the meeting. So there was no chance that Trump had a conversation with General Caine that bore any resemblance to what he's described. I never saw Caine wear a MAGA hat. The president addressed the service members there at the El Asad base. Got a very enthusiastic welcome. A lot of young men and women seeing their commander-in-chief. Really a very inspiring thing. I didn't see any MAGA hats in that crowd either, because most of them were in uniform. They're in a base in a hostile environment. And you don't wear, civilian accessories when you're dressed in uniform. And one of the commanders could not have done that and ever expected to get any respect from his subordinates when they did that. So I didn't see it. I don't believe it. And I think it's standard Trump. He makes up the world as he wants it to be, and then his followers, unfortunately, believe him.
Now, for what's worth, I totally believe John Bolton. Like, John Bolton's a lot of things. Dishonest is not one of them. Like, he's honest to a fault. He's a bit of a dickhead because he's so honest. Also, it just sounds made up. Trump's story sounds incredibly made up. The only thing missing was General Caine having tears in his eyes and calling Trump sir. Other than that, it had every ingredient of a made-up Trump story. So this is my question then. Why, if it's definitely not true, did Trump fixate on this guy for? Because he passed a lot of people to get to this guy. If he hasn't even met the guy, which is what John Bolton was insinuating, then why is he into this guy? There has to be a reason. There can't be no reason. Maybe the reason's stupid. Maybe he likes the look of him. Maybe he heard some story about Caine that he liked on the grapevine. Maybe. Or maybe Trump knows something about him that we don't. Something that he can't say publicly. I'm not being conspiratorial here.
Sure.
I'm not saying, this is the Manchurian candidate. I'm not saying, what I'm saying is maybe someone just told him that Caine is a huge MAGA loyalist.
Right, okay.
That's pretty easy to believe. He's an army dude. Maybe he's just a huge MAGA head, and he'd never put on a MAGA cap in front of Trump and go, yes, sir, I'll do it for you, I'll die for you, sir. Like, he wouldn't do that shit, but maybe behind the scenes, people were saying, dude, this guy...
He's one of yours.
Yeah, he's your man. If you want to do whatever you like, this is your man. Maybe. I don't know. All I'm saying is something that worries me. Trump picked him for a reason, and we don't know what it is. Another update from Planet America. We talked about in the cabinet meeting, we talked about Elon Musk turning up to Trump's cabinet meeting. You'll note we didn't overlap either of those two topics, the the Caine or the cabinet meeting with PEP because I try and keep them separate. So you should watch Planet America if you want the other stuff that we don't mention. But I saw this afterwards and I thought I should bring it here because I'm not going to have time to bring it on Planet America. Some interesting banter that Trump had with Fox News' Lawrence Jones, who was there. And, of course, Trump didn't know he was still being filmed at the time this happened.
Lawrence, look at Lawrence. This guy's making a fortune. He never had it so good. Lawrence, say we did a great job, please. Okay? Say it was unbelievable.
So just so you know, that didn't go out on Fox News. Someone leaked that.
Sure, okay, yeah.
So someone leaked that tape because they went, ooh, how about that? Probably, yeah. I don't know if it was someone from Fox or someone from some other station. Maybe someone from AP. But someone leaked it. That appears to be Trump asking the Fox News guy to say he did a good job and that the cabinet meeting was unbelievable. Trump's obviously joking, but is it kind of a...
Is it a funny joke?
Yeah, is it kind of a joking while nudge nudge wink wink? Is it joking on the square? Is it what's going on here? What do you think?
I think that you can say things with a smile on your face and a jokey tone, but it's still an order.
Yeah, I think you can as well. Whether that's what's happening there or not, I can't read Trump's mind. I will say he doesn't look super comfortable to me when he's saying that.
Oh.
He looks like he's starting to sweat. Like, not physically, but
Help me out here.
Yeah, Matt, look, you might disagree. You might watch that and go, there's nothing to it at all, 100% joke, move on. I'll let you be the judge. Just want to share it with you. Thought that was interesting.
Quite.
I feel like Trump might be starting to sweat, though. Okay, got some DOJ updates as well. There's a U.S. Attorney Purge. We're going to talk a lot about U.S. attorneys in the next PEP because I've got my sights set on one Ed Martin. I'm going to talk about him for some time. Yeah. But U.S. attorneys are the chief federal prosecutors for a region, and Trump just sacked all the ones that were appointed by Biden, which is most of them. Trump said over the past 4 years, the Department of Justice has been politicized like never before. Therefore, I've instructed the termination of all remaining Biden-era U.S. attorneys. We must clean house immediately and restore confidence. America's golden age must have a fair justice system. That begins today.
The golden age or the justice? I thought the golden age began on the 21st of Jan.
It keeps recommencing.
That's good.
That's one of the great things about golden ages. They're quite flexible. But, I'm not sure I agree the best way to restore confidence in the judiciary is to install a bunch of yes men. But, there are different strokes. Different strokes rule the world, folks. To be fair, I'm letting him have this one because, A, it is actually perfectly within his authority to do that. I don't know, it's bad practice, but it's within his authority. And B, presidents have done this before. I wish they hadn't, but they have. Bill Clinton fired 93 U.S. attorneys in 1993. W. Bush had a little mini purge. Trump fired 46 in his first term. Obama was clever about it. He did it subtly over a period of time, but he still did it. Biden got rid of 56 as well. So, look, this is bad. It's not unprecedented, though. So the key is who do you replace them with? And that's why I'll have a lot to say about Ed Martin in PEP 200.
Yeah.
Eric Adams update. Kathy Hochul is not replacing Eric Adams. She said his fate should be left to the voters to decide the ballot box. Instead, she increased oversight of him, creating a new state deputy inspector general with broad authority to watch over the city's dealings, and she gave other city officials more authority to sue the Trump administration without getting the mayor's permission. Now, recall, Judge Ho is currently deciding whether to allow the Department of Justice to dismiss Adams' charges without prejudice. I emphasize without prejudice, which means they can bring the charges back whenever they like if he pisses them off. That's why this is blackmail. If they dismiss the charges completely, then fine. They have no leverage over him anymore. But they didn't do that. They only have leverage because they've kept the charges hovering over his head, they can now charge him anytime they want. Now, Judge Ho could let them do that, or Judge Ho could insist the trial go ahead on April 21 when it's scheduled, or if the Department of Justice refuses to prosecute Adams, Judge Ho could appoint a special prosecutor to do it for them. He has all those options. There's a few arguments being made. Remember last week I said that their logic was so stupid you could use it for any job? Like, my postman can't be charged with murder because it would distract him from his rounds. It turns out Beauvais used almost exactly that argument in court. He didn't use the postman example, but he wants to expand the immunity that the U.S. Supreme Court recently granted to the president to all public officials for exactly the same reason.
Whoa.
All public officials should not be distracted from their duties by charges.
I feel like we should.
By triflings like criminal charges.
If only that applied to commercial radio hosts. That's the next step.
That's a whole nother topic if we're going to get into that one. Let's not. And he said they shouldn't be charged while in office because that would inhibit them from carrying out their duties. That's a bad argument. But he also made better arguments. Adams' lawyers put out a statement denying there was any quid pro quo. They said at no time prior to, during, or after the meeting did we, Mayor Adams, or anyone else acting on behalf of Mayor Adams offer anything to the department or anyone else in exchange for dismissal of the case, nor did the department or anyone else ever ask anything of us or the mayor in exchange for dismissing the case. There was no quid pro quo, period. Presumably they'd be prepared to testify to that as well. Yeah. Okay, if that's the case, then what's the problem? There's no deal, they say. They say we never said a deal. We never stated any kind of deal. We never made any promise. So it doesn't matter if the charges are hanging over his head. There's no blackmail. That's the argument.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad argument. Okay. The reason I think that's a bad argument is because who needs a clearly stated quid pro quo when you have a deferred prosecution hanging over your head? Do they have to say, we will charge you if you don't do what we want? Or can they just keep his balls in a cup and just keep twisting? That's all you need to do. Just another twist. I'm not saying anything. As I stand in front of the chore I'd like you to do. Twist. I'm not saying anything. Hey, look over there. Twist. That's an interesting image I just created.
Great image. I will not be photoshopping it.
In fact, I'd say deferred prosecution is a much more effective way of creating an understanding than an express agreement. Another good argument is that bribery convictions are not easy to land. You need to show some official act in exchange for benefits. But Eric Adams wasn't even the mayor when he struck up the relationship with Turkey. He was the Brooklyn borough president. But does the official act have to be from when you're in the same office? So if you offered something in one office and then you're in a new office, then use the new office's official act. I mean, look, I think it should count.
Yeah.
But honestly, they've poked so many holes in the Supreme Court have poked so many holes in the bribery law. It is just, you go, is this one more? The fact is, even Judge Ho admitted that there was some force to this challenge, saying the challenge being, we don't know for sure that the Supreme Court is going to go for this. And this is going to cost a lot of resources and take a lot of time. Time we could be better spent chasing crimes, like chasing violent crimes.
Yeah.
This is definitely a crime. Anyway, it's not unreasonable to say if you don't think you can make this charge stick, then you shouldn't prosecute it. That's reasonable. Yeah. I agree with that. But then dismiss it with prejudice, not without prejudice.
Take the cup away.
They didn't do that. So we'll see what Judge O has to say. By the way, Adams' lawyers are now saying it should be dismissed with prejudice, without the cup. Why? Because they said the recent government leaks, they're referring to Sassoon's resignation letter. Remember the prosecutor's resignation letter saying, there was a quid pro quo and all this kind of shit happened? Yep. Yeah, that was meant to be private. That was leaked.
Oh.
And they said they're saying this is just completely compromised his defense. That's ruined his reputation. And so there's irreparable prejudice, they said, to Mayor Adams' rights as a result of that. Adams' lawyer argues after it went public, influential leaders and politicians who initially championed the mayor are now insisting that he resign or that the governor remove him. I actually think that's a fair argument. I wouldn't dismiss the charges, but I think their point's not wrong. I think that's a respectable point to make.
For a fair trial.
Yeah. Anyway, Judge Ho's delaying his decision until he can get a super conservative but non-Trumpy legal scholar to present an arguable case to him. That's Paul Clement. Clement was Solicitor General under W. Bush. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it'll happen at some point in time, and then he'll make his decision. So that's your update. I reckon I have probably done enough in bits and peepers.
Okay.
So why don't we get to our interview, and then I'll talk about DOGE after that. A little bit of DOGE. Now, our interview, Jessica Riedl. Jessica worked for 6 years as the chief economist for Ohio Senator Rob Portman. She also worked for Marco Rubio's 2016 presidential campaign as director of budget and spending policy. Note, Rubio in 2016 did not suck because of his budget policy. His budget policy was perfectly acceptable. It was everything else. And also, she was the lead architect for Mitt Romney's 2012 presidential campaign's 10-year deficit reduction plan, which I always thought was a very reasonable plan. In hindsight, a lot of Mitt Romney looked very reasonable, although I thought it was reasonable at the time, I'm going to say. I'm going to do a lap of honour about that. Anyway, that was a tough election for me, that one. Like, I don't know why I'm talking about this now, but of all the elections, that was the one where the candidates were the most evenly matched for mine. Like Obama versus Romney, Obama's second term versus Romney. I found that really tough.
That was the
I mean, I didn't have to vote, so it didn't matter. But actually,
you also weren't doing Planet America, were
yes,
you?
I was, yeah.
You were?
That was when it started.
That was the first one?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Okay,
that was the first one.
right.
I found that a really tough one because there's a lot I liked about Romney. And if you told me that the future of the Republican Party would have been different if Romney was president, I absolutely would have taken the Romney beating Obama. And even as it was, I can't tell you because I didn't have to make the decision. I can't tell you who I would have favoured, but if I was American, there's every chance I would have voted for Romney over Obama. I found it really tough.
Knowing the future?
No, not knowing the future. Even without knowing the future, but knowing the future, 100%. But yeah, but even without knowing the future, I found it a really tough choice.
Fascinating.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Jessica Riedl worked for him, and Jessica Riedl is obviously a Republican. Was a Republican.
Another reason you would have voted for Mitt.
Yeah, well, there you go. Just because I rate Jessica Riedl. She was a Republican. I'm not sure she is anymore. In fact, I know she isn't because I asked her during the interview. But I just want to say a couple of things about this interview. The first of which was that when I was recording this interview, I knew that we're probably gonna want to use some of it for Planet America. And so I asked John if there were any questions he wanted me to ask, and he gave me a list of 6 or 7. And then I was trying to fit the questions in, even though they didn't really fit. And so there are a few times you'll notice there's some really awkward wording or where I'm covering something that she's already answered, or like I'm doing that. The reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to set up a question for potentially for the TV for John. So that, I haven't suddenly gotten a brain tumor. I knew what I was doing, but I was just trying to leave options for cutting bits and pieces out from the TV. And you can see that end up Johnny, I'm picking a question here, a question there for him to reword in a natural way. But that's what's going on there. That's why I've sometimes got some awkwardly worded questions. But yeah, we got through it. And secondly, if you're a little bit confused about, I keep on talking about Jessica being this awesome budget analyst, like literally probably the number 1 budget analyst in America, but you never heard of her, then maybe you've heard of Brian Riedl, which is what Jessica used to be known as. On that note, I say that because I also want to say one other thing, which is during this interview, I only asked Jessica Riedl about the budget and nothing else. And the reason I only asked Jessica Riedl about the budget is because she is one of the absolute experts about the budget. So if you're going to get an expert, talk to them about what they're an expert in. And I just want to say that was my choice. She did not ask me to only ask her about the budget.
Yeah.
Even though, as a budget expert, I think she would have had a reasonable grounds to expect I would only ask her about the budget. But she never said a word. That was my choice on me. Okay? So don't be thinking this has anything to do with her asking behind the scenes or anything. Nothing was off limits. I chose to only speak about the budget, and I'm damn proud that I did because it's a great interview. Enjoy Jessica Riedl. Jessica Riedl, welcome to Planet America.
Glad to be here.
Now, let's start with the budget. What do you make of the House budget bill? Is that what America needs right now?
Well, right now, the House budget bill looks like it's going to add a lot more debt. The United States is already projected to run in $20 trillion in new deficits over the next decade. And this bill cuts taxes by $4.5 trillion more over the decade. It does call for $1.2 trillion in spending cuts. I don't think Congress can pass them. So I'm worried that this could push it up to about $25 trillion in borrowing over the next decade, which will push budget deficits up towards 7-8% of GDP, even during peace and prosperity. I would like to see a lot more restraint.
Now, Republicans have heard your concerns and they don't care because they say the budget is going to reduce the deficit through supercharged growth. Do you think they're right?
This is an old gimmick. The Republican budget assumes that the day this budget is implemented on October 1st, the productivity rate in America will immediately double that day and stay at the higher productivity growth rate forever. I hope they're right. There is no basis to suggest that that will happen. And using that assumed revenue and already spending it is kind of like buying a house you can't afford on the hope that next year you'll get your pay doubled in order to pay for it. It's a gimmick.
Things like doubling the productivity, has that ever happened in history?
The rate has doubled temporarily for a year or two, but for the most part, no. The productivity rate does not magically double like the Republicans are assuming. It ebbs and flows. After World War II, productivity was higher because we had some new technology. It went up for a little while in the 1990s with the technology boom. It never just suddenly doubled and stayed there. And lawmakers know that, but they want to make it look like they're reducing the deficit, so they play this little game that the economy is going to catch fire.
The Republicans also believe that they're going to make at least $1.5 trillion worth of cuts through eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. How much waste, fraud, and abuse do you think is in the budget, and how much of it is realistically cuttable?
There is waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget. Payment errors, for instance, cost about $200 billion a year out of a $7 trillion budget. Of course, it's one thing to see payment errors. It's another thing to fix them and to create new systems in order to actually reduce payment errors. But the reality is, if we're going by Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, it actually looks like they're going to reduce next to nothing. Rather than actually looking for real waste like payment errors, they're really doing what I call spending cut theater, which is looking for little things in the budget like grants for DEI and going after that. You know, if you don't like that spending, that's fine, but this is what we call budget dust. So far, the cuts by DOGE would save 1/30th of 1% of all federal spending. Again, this is spending cut theater.
We'll come back to them, don't worry. Now, Liberals will agree with pretty much everything you've just been saying. And they'll say, well, that's why we should raise taxes on the wealthy. Simple. Why can't you solve the debt problem by simply raising taxes to save Bill Clinton's time? The economy was great back then.
If we raise taxes back to Bill Clinton's time, it still would not come anywhere close to paying for all of the spending. And even if we did that, you would have policy changes a lot of Americans don't want. You would have to get rid of the $2,000 per child tax credit. You would have to bring back the marriage penalty that taxes married couples more. You'd have to add 10 million people to the income tax rolls who in the meantime had fallen off the income tax rolls. And through all of that, you would raise about 1 or 2% of GDP in revenues out of a deficit of 7% of GDP. Now, I believe everything has to be on the table. Spending, taxes, everything. But the idea that if we just tax the rich, we can balance the budget, it doesn't work that way. We could raise taxes to 100% on high earners. We could seize every penny of wealth from America's billionaires. It still wouldn't be enough to balance the budget. That's how big the problem is.
So if taxing the wouldn't get it done, not even close from what you're saying, where is all this spending coming from? It doesn't feel like people are getting much more than there was 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, there's a bit more Medicaid, there's a bit more food stamps, but I mean, where is this money going?
Most of it has gone to Social Security and healthcare. For Social Security, we have 74 million baby boomers retiring, and it's straining the system. It's more than the normal taxpayers are paying into the system and can afford. Additionally, the Social Security program is designed to become more generous each generation, even beyond inflation. On the healthcare side, we have doubled the number of people on Medicaid, and those 74 million baby boomers have also retired into Medicare. So you put together rising healthcare costs, more people on government healthcare and Social Security, and you see spending rising. A distressing part of the spending hike, however, is interest on the debt. The combination of a bigger debt and higher interest rates has tripled the interest costs on the national debt in just the past 3 years. And they're going to double again over the next decade to $2 trillion a year. That's going to push up deficits as well.
So are you saying that a large part of the problem, not all of it, but a large part of the problem is simply demographics. And no matter what people did, there was going to be a fiscal crunch at some point in time when the baby boomers got old, and that's where we're at.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And that's distressing for budget nerds like me. We've known this is coming for 50 years. In the 1990s, there was talk about fixing Social Security and Medicare, and everyone ignored it. And in the 2000s, George Bush tried to fix Social Security, and everyone said, well, there's no problem. The problem is if we would have fixed it 20, 30 years ago, the baby boomers would have had time to adjust to the gradual changes. But we didn't. This was the most predictable economic crisis in history, in the words of Bill Clinton's former chief of staff. And now it's going to be harder to fix because the baby boomers are already retired. And you don't want to pull the rug out from under these people when they're 75 years old, when we could have phased in the reforms when they were 40 years old.
Does that mean that somewhere down the road in 20 or 30 years' time, we're going to get on the other side of this and there'll be riches for everyone because we're on the other side of the demographic boom?
I wish it were that easy. The part that's driven by rising healthcare costs in Medicare and Medicaid is going to keep rising. The healthcare costs are going to keep rising. As for the demographic bulge, we have the problem. It's not a problem except to nerdy budget accountants, but people are living longer. You know, people are living to 90, 95 years old. And even when the demographic bulge ends, the remaining people retiring who are going to be living to 90, 95, 100 are still going to be collecting Social Security for 30 or 35 years, which is going to strain these costs. It's wonderful that people are living longer, but for government finances, it's going to get more expensive, even when there's fewer of them.
Now, I understand you're an all of the above person. You've already said that. You're not preaching any particular kind of fiscal responsibility, just have some fiscal responsibility. I get it. But in terms of Social Security, I think a lot of our viewers won't realize the way Social Security taxes work. Can you explain how they work? And can you explain why we wouldn't, and I expect you probably would think we should, why we wouldn't just increase Social Security taxes for the wealthier people just to help? It won't solve everything, but just to help a little.
So Social Security is misunderstood by a lot of the public. People think when you pay your Social Security tax during your life, it gets saved into a bank account for when you retire. That's not how it works. Your Social Security taxes today go straight to retirees today. And we basically write an IOU for the benefits when you retire. That works as long as you have enough taxpayers paying into the system at any given moment to pay the retirees. Well, in 1960, there were 5 workers paying for every retiree. Today, there's 3 workers paying for every retiree. And in a decade, it's going to be 2 to 1. That means every married couple is going to be on the hook for the pension and health care of their very own retiree. That's how it strains the system. We hear about a Social Security trust fund, but there's no money actually saved for the future. It's just an IOU. Now, some suggest raising the payroll tax or having upper income people pay more. That can be a part of the solution, but it doesn't come close to enough. Even if you applied Social Security taxes to wages all the way up to the top in terms of income, you'd still only close a small fraction of the gap. You'd only extend the life of the trust fund for 5 years. And for progressives, you'd be using up all the taxes on the rich for Social Security, leaving no room to tax the rich for any other progressive priorities that we hear about a lot.
Yeah. Can you, going back to the budget for a second, can you explain for our viewers? It's a bit complicated. I tried to do this on the podcast yesterday, but I think you'll do a better job. Can you explain for our viewers this theory of using current policy as a baseline rather than using current law as a baseline, which the Republicans have been talking about, and why America can't just solve all their budgeting problems just by doing that?
The nerdy subject, bear with me. Whenever Congress is measuring spending and tax cuts, you have to start with a default picture of the federal budget over the next 10 years. The question is, let's say Congress cut taxes in 2017 and said they're going to expire in 2027. Should you start from a baseline that assumes they expire on schedule, or should you start from a baseline that assumes they get renewed? Typically, Congress has worked on current law. If it expires, we're going to start from a baseline that it expires. That means if you want to extend it, you got to pay for it. The Senate is talking about moving to a current policy baseline that says, let's just assume that the current policies continue. And what that means is we don't have to pay for it. We can just assume it as part of the baseline, so we won't have to pay for this policy. The danger here and the big picture is, look, Congress can use whatever budget rules it wants. It can use whatever baselines it wants. Congress makes its own rules. But ultimately, the extra trillions of dollars in borrowing are still going to happen. The deficit still rises. The interest costs still bury taxpayers. And the economy still sinks under the interest costs. You can play budget games and say this doesn't count, but you're not going to fool the economy or the bond market or math.
So many budget tricks, it seems to me, revolve around beating the filibuster. That the one we just talked about is yet another one.
Yeah.
Wouldn't reform be much more likely to occur if the filibuster didn't exist?
Perhaps yes. You know, what the filibuster does is it ensures that reforms have to be bipartisan, because it's very rare for one party to have 60 of the 100 Senate seats and therefore be able to avoid a filibuster on all their bills. And, you know, the only way we're going to fix the budget is both parties sitting down together with everything on the table and coming up with a bipartisan plan. If one party tries to do this all by themselves with a one-sided partisan solution, the other side is going to attack them so much that it would be political suicide. Both parties need to give each other political cover to make these tough choices. And that means it has to be bipartisan. But the more these parties think, if we can use reconciliation and avoid a filibuster, then we don't have to work with the other party, you're not actually going to get a lot done. And we're seeing that right now. Republicans are saying that we can cut spending on a party line basis to pay for some of our tax cuts, but it's not going to pass right now. Even Republicans have said it's too hard to do this and too risky to do this by ourselves. So you need incentives for bipartisanship to build something sustaining.
Let me ask you the same question I asked a Conservative last week, and I think you'll do a better job. I don't know, maybe you won't, we'll see. Is there a way to make real savings from Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid without hurting poor people? And if there is it feasible politically?
Absolutely, and I have written blueprints to do so. There's a myth with Social Security and Medicare that seniors are impoverished and this is the only way they can pay for their expenses. In reality, senior income has grown about 10 times faster than worker income over the past 50 years. There are millions of seniors collecting Social Security and Medicare benefits who are multi-millionaires right now. I put out a blueprint last June that would fix Social Security and Medicare without touching low-income seniors. What we would do, though, is trim benefits for the richest seniors, the ones who made so much money over their lifetimes, but are still collecting huge subsidies in Social Security and Medicare far beyond what they ever paid into the system. I think it's fair to say you should get back about what you paid into the system. But if you're a high earner, if you're earning hundreds of thousands of dollars even after retirement, I don't think you should get a lot more than you paid into the system. I think we can trim benefits for the top half and especially the richest and fix Social Security and Medicare without hurting the seniors who are really low income.
So when you're talking to Democrats about this, as I imagine you probably have, what do they say? Because you'd think that this would play into their policy arc.
I get two answers from Democrats. The private answer is, at some point, we are going to have to fix these programs, and that's probably the direction we're going to have to go, is we're going to have to raise taxes, and if we have to trim benefits, better to start with the richest seniors than the poorest seniors. But the second part of their answer is, publicly, we're not going to say that now. We can get a lot of political power by attacking people trying to solve this problem. And this will allow us to win more elections, demagogue the issue. And a lot of Democrats feel that the longer we wait to reform these programs, the older the baby boomers get, the more we'll be forced to do taxes instead of benefit changes because it'll be too late to change the boomers' benefits. So Democrats get the issue, at least the ones who look at the numbers in Congress, but they're playing a little Machiavellian way of looking at this, where they don't want to solve it just yet, as long as they can get some political benefit.
Can I ask you, with regards to your plan, because I don't know the details of your plan, I just heard what you just said. Does it involve lifting the eligibility age for Social Security and Medicare? And the reason why I ask that is because that is the classic thing that people always say when you talk about this. Go, well, people are getting older. You get like they're living longer, so lift the eligibility age. And what the question I have about that, I don't know whether the answer is yes or not yet. But the question I always have with lifting the eligibility age is that yes, rich people's life expectancy is getting longer all the time. Poor people's life expectancy is not. Poor people's life expectancy in America, at least, is in the low 70s. It's pathetic. And so if you lift the age of eligibility for Social Security and Medicare in a way that's totally fair for the middle class and the upper class, it's not at all fair for the working class. So what's your thoughts about that?
My plan does raise the age. It was 65 when Social Security was created in 1935, back when people often didn't live past 65. It's currently on its way to 67 based on some reforms passed in 1983. But, if you keep it at 67, people who lived in 90 will spend 1/3 of their adult life collecting Social Security. Yeah. That gets pretty expensive. My plan gradually raises it to 69 over a period of 10 or 15 years, which lifespans are longer. I think we can absorb that. As for your point about certain people not living as long, some of the decline in life expectancy at low incomes is sadly among people who never make it to 65. There's a big increase in drug overdoses, deaths of despair, suicides for younger people. But those who make it to Social Security age, those who make it to 65, 66, 67, often do live up into the late 70s, even at some lower incomes. Still not as much as higher incomes, but some. And for them, you can still have an early eligibility age and a beefed up Social Security disability program for those who, let's say, worked in a mill their whole lives and can't make it to 69 because they have back problems. You can create small exceptions for those small groups of people. But ultimately, again, we can't have people spending 1/3 of their adult life on taxpayer-funded retirement unless we're prepared to significantly raise taxes.
Sure. Why does the debt matter? I remember 30 years ago, people were worrying about the effects of the debt.
Yeah.
Well, the effect seems to have been nothing so far. And then other countries aren't doing any better than America is. So why not just keep going?
I think a lot of the debt warnings 30 years ago were not that the debt was that bad 30 years ago, but that we knew that the retiring baby boomers in the 2020s, 2030s were going to create a debt problem. Right now, we are on pace under current policies to have the debt jump to 230% of GDP over the next 30 years. And that's with interest rates staying low. If interest rates go up to, say, 4.5% or 5%, the United States could have a debt of 300% of its economy. We haven't seen countries survive debts this big before. And even if it's 300% of GDP, you're going to be in a situation where the interest, just the interest, is consuming nearly 100% of all tax revenues. At that point, if you're going to keep borrowing, you're going to go beyond what people can lend. You're going to go beyond what the bond market can afford. You're going to be beyond what other countries can lend to the United States. And then you're going to have to print the money. And that's where you get problems with real inflation. There is a budget constraint. And the constraint is the ability of others to lend Washington money. And if the debt's going up to $200 trillion or higher, you will exceed the ability of the financial markets to lend.
Do you think there's going to be a shutdown in March? And if there is, what will be the ramifications of that?
I think there probably will not be a shutdown because we have these appropriations deadlines every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times. Usually, we have a very chaotic situation with everyone predicting a shutdown and lawmakers in chaos, and at the 11th hour, they usually come to a deal. I think the default assumption is they will come to a deal again, But it's going to have to be, again, a bipartisan deal because you're going to need 60 votes in the Senate, and the Republicans only hold 53 seats. So it may not be a very, very exciting deal. The deal may simply be to extend appropriated programs at the same level of spending as last year, which is how they're operating right now. But ultimately, I don't foresee a shutdown happening if we get to that.
Okay, now we get to DOGE. It's, what about DOGE? How do you feel about its efforts so far?
DOGE has been off to a rocky start. That's the nicest way I can say it. At this point, it seems like Elon Musk and his band of Silicon Valley budget cutters are dramatically out of their depth. They don't seem to understand the federal budget. They don't seem to understand federal accounting. They're making enormous mistakes, creating enormous chaos, breaking so many laws, and ultimately creating chaos for government employees, for government contractors, for recipients of government spending, all while saving virtually no money.
DOGE is now claiming to have saved $65 billion in federal funds. I take it you disagree with that. Do you find that figure credible at all?
A deep dive into the actual wall of receipts for their $65 billion reveals that it's actually closer to $2 billion. First, they only listed about $16 billion, and they made enormous mathematical errors. For instance, when they canceled an $8 million grant, they misstated it as $8 billion. That's an $8 billion math error. So that right there cuts them down from 16 billion to 8 billion. Then from there, there's all sorts of misreading of government contracts, counting government contracts that had already been fulfilled or that had never been signed in the first place. In one spot, they triple counted the same contract. It's really about $2 billion they have saved, which is 1/30th of 1% of federal spending. It has actually been an embarrassing spectacle at this point.
Do you think in the end, they've only just begun, it's only been a month. Do you think in the end, after 17 more months of this, they're going to make a difference at all? And if so, how?
I don't see how DOGE can ultimately make a difference in federal spending because several reasons. First off, the targets they're looking at, DEI contracts, subscriptions to Politico, are symbolic cultural issues meant to excite the Republican base, but they don't actually have much money. They're what we call budget dust. So it doesn't matter how deep they go into these government contracts or these subscriptions. There's just not much money there. The real money is in 6 programs that consume 75% of federal spending. And that's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, veterans, and interest. And those 6 are mostly off the table, according to President Trump. If you can't touch Social Security and Medicare, Republicans want to expand spending for defense and veterans. You can't directly cut interest. What's left? There's not much. But the other reason DOGE won't save a lot of money, they can't legally cut spending by very much. It is illegal for federal agencies to spend less than the amount of money Congress passed a law giving them. That's called impoundment, and it's illegal. They can move money around, but DOGE cannot unilaterally cancel spending. To do that, you need Congress to pass new legislation reducing the spending levels, and that's probably not going to happen.
Jessica, I've been saying this to Blue in the face for the last month about that's illegal, that's illegal, that's illegal, everything's illegal, but they're still doing it. Now, I know it's going through a court process. I know eventually the courts are going to strike down some of these cuts, but if you sack enough people, close down enough departments, you can't reopen them. You can't get those people back because they've moved on. So isn't there going to be some money saved just through illegal activity that can't be clawed back?
It's possible. There is a lot of chaos being created, a lot of things being broken that can't be put together quickly. An example is the federal government told a lot of USAID aid workers stationed in other countries, in Africa, in South America, in Asia, you have 30 days to pull your kids out of school, get rid of the place you live, and get back to America. People who do that and uproot their lives like that may not be in a hurry to go back and reestablish their roles in those countries if the courts shoot down the cuts. Agencies that get shuttered are going to have a hard time rebuilding. And it may be the case that DOGE is counting on that. They're counting on chaos. They're counting on breaking things that can't be easily fixed. Ultimately, eventually, they will be fixed. Governments can grow back over time, but it may not be with the same people, and you may lose a lot of advantages and that the agencies had already had. You may lose a lot of knowledge, a lot of systems, and a lot of good people trying to put it back together.
Should we care whether Congress has a say in Trump's plans to reduce costs and maybe dismantle entire agencies like USAID, for instance, and the Department of Education? Or should we just be pleased that someone is making the hard decisions?
We should be very concerned because the Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse for a reason, which is that Congress is closer to the American people. They're elected more often than the president, at least in the House. They represent smaller groups and are more responsive. And honestly, if Congress isn't passing bills to do this, that suggests that the American people don't support it. If the president is eliminating departments that the American people want eliminated, then Congress should have no problem passing the bills. The fact that they can't means that the people closest don't want this. Additionally, a warning to Republicans. The powers you give Donald Trump today to run over Congress are the same powers a Democratic president is going to have the next time they win the White House. And if Donald Trump can unilaterally get rid of the Department of Education, a Democratic president can unilaterally fire all the border control agents or lay off much of our troops in the Defense Department. Be careful the power you give allies, because the other side can use that power too.
We've already seen significant job cuts through the DOGE process. Departments have been told to expect more job cuts. Even after the costs of buyouts and redundancies and possible reversals down the track from courts, are there significant savings being created, at least from sackings?
Not much. Some. Let's put some numbers on it. If we eliminated 1/4 of all government jobs, that would be about 550,000 government jobs. It would save 1% of federal spending. Now, we're not going to eliminate 550,000 government jobs, but even then, again, it's 1% of spending. Now, I'm a conservative. I'm a free market person. If there are government employees who are redundant in their work, who aren't doing a good job, who are in agencies that we no longer need, I absolutely agree that we should shed those jobs and reduce the number of federal employees. But ultimately, that's not where the money is. The money is in the actual benefits that go out the door. The money is in the actual weapon systems, the veterans' benefits. You can only save so much from cutting government employment.
There seems to be an attitude, on that note, there seems to be an attitude from Elon Musk in particular that federal workers are essentially useless. And the more you can cut, the better. Is cutting workers the path to a sustainable future of government? Or is it necessary to have 2 million workers?
It depends on the agency and the function. You know, the Social Security Administration is often considered understaffed. It's very hard to get a hold of the Social Security Administration if you have problems with your benefits. The Department of Veterans Affairs has pretty poor customer service because they're understaffed. And as much as everybody hates the Internal Revenue Service, the lack of staffing reduces revenues and also has created a backlog of 30 million tax returns, as well as the fact that you can't get anyone to answer the phone there. But there are other agencies where you could pull back. The Department of Agriculture has 100,000 employees, which means there's one employee for every 3 farmers. Probably don't need that. There's a lot of other little duplicative programs that Congress creates that keep doing the same things. We have 80 different job training programs. We can probably consolidate those agencies and employees. But again, you need to do this surgically and not say we're going to just randomly get rid of federal employees that do customer service. There's also a concern here that the more the government tries to make it tough for government employees, the more they say you're not going to have job security, you're not going to enjoy this job, we're going to try to push you out. Well, who's going to be the government employees who leave? Probably the good employees who have options elsewhere are going to be the ones who leave. And the poor performing government employees who don't have other options are going to hang on to their government jobs for dear life. So the more you make government work undesirable and a pain, you're probably going to attract lower quality employees. That's a concern.
We've talked about the crashing through process of DOGE, just breaking stuff, seeing what happens. Trump has moved with astonishing speed against the other parts of the federal government in the last month. What surprised you most about what you're seeing, if anything at all?
I've been surprised by the chaos, which I shouldn't be surprised with Donald Trump. But it's different. It's a different kind of chaos than we had in his first term. In Trump's first term, the chaos were crazy tweets and the occasional crazy policy. I did not expect DOGE to essentially attempt an entire demolition of the federal bureaucracy. Trump didn't campaign on this. Republicans didn't campaign on this. And frankly, the law doesn't allow it. So this wasn't the most anticipated action. But, you know, what we've learned with Trump is be prepared to be surprised.
Okay, we're on to the home stretch now, Jessica. You said you're a conservative.
Yes.
You were a Republican at one point in time. I don't know if you still are. How are
independent these days?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, how are you reconciling in your own head the people who you remember from the Tea Party being the same people who are now fighting for such extreme profligacy under Trump?
It's extraordinarily depressing and distressing. The Republican Party of the Tea Party era talked so much about cutting spending and balancing the budget. In hindsight, it seemed like most of their focus was getting rid of some of Obama's spending, like the Wall Street bailouts and stimulus. And as soon as people realized that most of the spending goes to Social Security and Medicare and benefits for ourselves, all of a sudden the Tea Party wasn't that interested in cutting spending anymore. And then you also realize that a lot of the people who seemed to be committed fiscal conservatives during those years, when they got close to power, when they saw somebody that worked with them gain the White House and get elected, all of a sudden they really sold out a lot of their policy positions and views in return for a really nice office, a really nice title, walking distance to the Oval Office, and probably a lot more money when they leave government. And for those of us true believers left behind, it's kind of distressing.
Do you hold any real hope that America will get its fiscal house back on track? And if not, when do you think things come to a real crunch?
America will get its fiscal house in order, but not until they have to. My worry is, despite decades of prodding, no one's going to listen to me. It's going to take an economic crisis. And I think there probably will be a fiscal crisis at some point, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we don't know. But eventually, the bond market is not going to be able to lend all this money, and you're going to see a bit of a financial meltdown. And after we've exhausted all rational and easier options, we'll have no choice but to address this. And unfortunately, by that point, it's going to be a lot more painful.
Finally, I know you've said you've put out plans on how to deal with this stuff. Are there any tax reforms involving entirely new taxes that you'd like to see potentially implemented, potentially replacing some of the taxes we already have? Like, for instance, just throw out a few: carbon taxes, GST, land taxes, share transaction taxes, or any other tax that you can think of that you think would be more efficient and better used in America than some of the taxes that currently exist?
My plan does not create a lot of new taxes because I'm trying to work within the existing parameters of where Congress is. If I was, queen for a day, there's a lot, I would replace this. I would, replace the income tax with a consumption tax. That's not going to happen. But I do create a carbon tax because that is a way to help the environment while raising some money. And then I make sure that the low earners get the money rebated to them at the end of the year, so it doesn't cost them very much. High earners do not. So there is a carbon tax, but beyond that, I didn't want to do my fantasy tax code if I was starting from scratch, because that might be indulgent for myself, but it's not where Congress is going to be when it's time to fix the tax code. And I wanted to go where they are.
Fair enough. Jessica Riedl, thank you so much for all the time you've given us. Like the fact you answer so quickly as well means we've had twice as many answers as I would have expected this time. So it's fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
This has been fun.
There we go. Thank you so much, Jessica. I really, really appreciate it. As you can see,
that was fun.
I'm a big budget nerd, so I love this.
I love that. I mean, you just go right into the weeds. It's actually really fun. I like that we're able to just go right into that. No, this was great. I was out for a little while, but I'm happy to jump in and do this again sometime soon. I'm
so glad. I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Have a good one.
So that was Jessica Riedl. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I noticed that, Lucky, you left a little bit long at the end. You thought that was cute?
I thought it was really sweet how much you both enjoyed talking about being budget nerds. And again, to your point, leading into the interview, you just talked about the budget and at massive length, which is really, really fun.
Yes. Well, okay, that's fair enough. I just want you guys to know that wasn't me being self-indulgent. That was Lockie.
That was me
being indulgent.
That was me.
Okay, let's now we got half an hour. No, 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Jesus. I'm gonna do my best. Let's go. Okay.
Do you want me to set a timer?
No, it's all right. Stats Nugget.
Stats Nugget.
This one's from Christian. It's one line, but it's a beauty. Lucky. Social Security is going to pay out $205 billion less in future benefits because of COVID. Because of COVID-related premature deaths. That's how many people
got killed.
Who would have lived to cash in their Social Security on average. Will never get to do that because they died during COVID. $205 billion. Don't tell DOGE. That's all I would say. Don't let them know.
If Musk has made the accusations that he has made about where COVID came from and found out that information, interesting. That's a great stats nugget.
It is a great stat. Thank you, Christian. That's a beauty. All right. We're going to play the sting that you all hate.
Smell the Musk. Smell the Musk.
And we're going to play every single day until you stop complaining about it. And that's why we're going to play forever.
Smell the Musk.
There were so many comments.
Okay, I got just two little DOGE sections and then let's get out of here. They're not little.
Not let's get out of here. Chaz has a meeting.
Yeah, I do.
In 20 minutes.
I do. Oh, God. I want to go through the sackings quickly. I said it was hard to estimate the number of sackings during PEP.
Yes.
The estimates varied between 100K and 300K workers, sacked out of about 3 million. I've now seen lower estimates of only 30K sacked.
Oh.
There's a distinct lack of transparency about DOGE. We will return to that. But I want to just take you through. This is not including the 75,000 who took the OPM buyout. Remember that buyout of like over 9 months they can stay home and all that kind of stuff.
And
okay.
if they get to claim that,
Yeah, if they get to claim it. Good point. Okay, so this is just sackings. The main way people have been sacked is people on probation. We don't know the number, but we know that. We know that they've been sacking people on probation because it's much easier to sack people on probation. When people first get jobs, they have 1 year to 2 years of probation, which is like a trial. You don't have the statutory right to appeal a sacking.
You put me on a 4-year probation.
You are on a permanent probation. From the Merit Systems Protection Board. Dude, you have the safest job on earth because no one else would ever volunteer to take it.
That's how I get all my jobs.
That is protection for you. From the Merit Systems Protection Board, quote, if the agency terminates you for unsatisfactory performance or conduct during your probationary period, you are entitled to a written notice while you are being separated and the effective date of the separation. The agency must, at a minimum, state its conclusions as to the inadequacies in your performance or conduct. You may appeal your termination only if you allege it was based on partisan political reasons or marital status. So there's not a lot of room to appeal if you're on probation. After your full federal worker protections kick in, then you're a lot harder to sack. So the Trump administration has been trying to sack as many probational employees as they can.
Would the partisan political reasons come in?
Well, what's the partisan element here of
yeah.
I mean, like
if everyone's gone.
Yeah, if they're just sacking people across the board.
True.
You know, like then they're not asking them, is it because you're a Republican or a Democrat? Like if this
getting fired by a Republican is not partisan. Sorry.
Yeah. This is one of the very few times when there hasn't been any partisanship in this administration, where they go, nah, we're sacking every person we possibly can.
Okay, great point. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, it's all right. It's okay. I'm starting to think we're not going to get there, and so I'm going to try and continue after the meeting. But anyway, I'm sorry. I've got a problem. There's something wrong with me. Help me. I need to pass on information. Anyway, this is not ideal, this probational thing, because these people are the future of the public service.
Yeah.
Which means you're going to be sacking the latest trained workers, the most recently trained workers with the most relevant skills. You don't want those ones to be sacked. And you're not sacking the people who most need sacking. You're sacking just people you can sack. And most of all, when people get promotions, they often also get put on probation for a year after their promotion.
Oh.
So they're not new. They're people who might have just gotten a senior role. They're people who might have been around for 20 years. They've done good work, gotten promoted as a result. Now they're on probation. Those people are getting sacked.
Whoa.
So they're the last people you want to sack. So this is a terrible strategy. There's about 220,000 of these probation employees in total. So who has been sacked? Let's roll through them. The health department, 5,600 people have been sacked, including from the CDC, 1,260 staff from the Epidemic Intelligence Service, otherwise known as the disease detectives. That's more than half of them. They're the ones who are supposed to examine a new disease if it compromises the nation's ability to function. They're important people.
Yeah.
They're sacked. Workers from the World Trade Center Health Program for 9/11 first responders have also been sacked. Also, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, it's a leading research center in the world for medical research. About 1,500 of them have been sacked. That's about a tenth of the workers it includes a tenth of the workers from the NIH's famous Center for Alzheimer's and Related Dementias, including their incoming director, who is a huge hire. She's basically the most important researcher in the world in that field. It was a coup to get her, and they've sacked her. Also, a bunch of senior researchers as well. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about people getting promotions and they're getting sacked.
They're gone. Yeah.
They're gone. This is an area where the NIH is literally leading world research by a mile. And it was also set by Republicans, by the way, and now it's been completely compromised by penny pinching because their wage is not, that's not where the money is in the budget. The wage of one of the world's great researchers is not worth saving.
As you talked about in the interview.
I did, at length. Those people are irreplaceable. Then also the FDA, they sacked 750 more. Also, the National Nuclear Security Administration. Now, you might think that doesn't sound like a good place to sack people. ABC News in America reported hundreds sacked from there out of 1,800 people.
Oh, dear.
That's quite a percentage. And those staff were on the ground, quote, at facilities where nuclear weapons are built. These staff oversee the contractors who build nuclear weapons and inspect the weapons. One of the staffers forced out of his position, yeah, that's right, Lucky.
Great.
Was the acting chief of defense for nuclear safety.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing.
He's the top authority for all nuclear safety matters in the agency. Sacked. Others include staffers at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is responsible for maintaining and minimizing radiation and potential damage from accidents at nuclear sites. Also, the emergency preparedness manager and radiation protection manager and the security manager and the fire protection engineer from Los Alamos National Laboratory.
Have they also fired the cap that's in front of the big red button so that no one accidentally presses it?
You could save 20 cents.
Yeah. It's a necessary cut.
Get to it, DOGE. You might be surprised to hear that after these sackings were publicised, people were alarmed. And at that point in time, DOGE realised maybe they should get them back. So they tried to rehire all these people.
Oh.
Unfortunately, they couldn't because
they'd all got new jobs?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A lot of them just got snapped up immediately. In fact, some of them couldn't even be contacted because they no longer had their department emails because they were sacked.
This guy.
Because I should say they weren't given a time to get out. It was just gone. See you later.
What were the 5 things you did last week? Oh, just stopped nuclear explosion. And then the AI looks at that and goes, yeah, this doesn't matter.
Yeah. They knew best. I like what they thought the National Nuclear Security Administration actually did, because apparently they didn't know that's what it did. They had no idea.
And they haven't said what they thought it did.
Yeah,
because why would they?
Yeah, that's right. And if you're that clueless, why are they in charge of sacking people? Which is the question I'm going to keep on coming back to. This is why you have checks and balances, for those who think I fret too much about checks and balances. Okay, Homeland Security, 400 Homeland Security employees sacked, including FEMA, 200 from there. Department of Interior, 2,300 workers sacked, including 800 from the Bureau of Land Management, 1,000 from National Park Service, 1,000 from the Department of Energy, 4,200 from the Department of Agriculture. That's more than 3,400 Forest Service employees, including a bunch of disaster response people help in recovery from Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. Isn't that nice? Also includes many in the National Animal Health Laboratory Network Program Office, which coordinate. Now, you might think to yourself, oh, you can lose them. Who cares about animal health? I'll tell you who cares about animal health. People who like
Eat
to
animals.
eat eggs.
Oh, yeah, that too.
There's bird flu at the moment, Lockie.
Ah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
That's
you want
bad.
your chickens to be healthy. They sacked 25% of the employees testing for bird flu, as well as the scientists and inspectors. They desperately tried to get them back as well. What did they think those people were doing when they sacked them? Exactly. But anyway, they desperately tried to get them back as well.
Sounds like that Social Security payout's going to save a lot more money in a few years.
That's right. Yeah, it's win-win, Lockie. Once again, they were unsuccessful getting a lot of them back. Housing and Urban Development, about half of their 9,600 staffers have been cut. The Office of Community Planning Development, they cut 84% of them. They went from 936 to 150. Their job is also to help with hurricane recovery. Their job is when there's gaps that FEMA can't fill, and God knows there's plenty of them, they rebuild homes and to fill those gaps. So homes are necessary right now in North Carolina and LA, and they're not going to get built because they cut 84% out of that agency. NOAA, that's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or the weather guys. 880 sackings there out of 11,000. That's about 7% of the workforce, including earth scientists, meteorologists, computer modelers, and space weather forecasters. They've already shut down some weather balloon launches. This could be related to a Project 2025 push to privatise the weather. Maybe, maybe not. EPA, at least 300 of those Environmental Protection Agency workers sacked. Veterans Administration, more than 1,000 of them sacked. Including medical care, disability claims, support services. All of those, by the way, depend on having enough staff to process calls and requests. Otherwise, they'll get backlogs and worsening care and increased suffering for injured veterans. Doesn't sound like a good idea. They're already notoriously understaffed, the VA. So when it became obvious they were literally compromising medical and psychiatric care for veterans, they tried to get some of them back as well. There's a lot of this, trying to get people back after fired. NASA, they sacked 1,500 of them out of 17,000 workers. Department of Education.
Surprised they only cut 1,500.
Well,
I mean, I guess 1,500 people can go work for SpaceX now.
Exactly.
Yeah, that actually works.
Department of Education, they decimated the Institute for Education Sciences, this is actually probably the one that upsets me the most. You might go, who cares about that?
I mean, you like education. Of course people care. Yeah, sorry.
No, but it's not just about education. What these guys do is they fund most of the long-running education research, like education research of studies and programs that goes for 20, 30 years.
Massive. Okay.
So they're buggering up long-term studies. They've been decades in the making to penny pinch about people's education. That annoys me. That's vandalism in my view. The IRS were told to lay off almost...
Oh, we're still going.
Still going. Still going. Oh, don't worry. Still going. The IRS were told to lay off almost 6,700 workers, about 7% of the agency. 5,000 of them are working in tax enforcement, which is weird because isn't DOGE interested in efficiency and state capacity? Because if you're interested in efficiency and state capacity, you don't sack the revenue collectors, especially in the middle of tax season. Although, admittedly, they were explicitly told not to sack anyone deemed critical to filing season. And you can trust them to never make a mistake, can't you? These guys are reliable, safe as the houses not being built by the Housing and Urban Development because they've all been sacked.
As safe as a nuclear service site without any workers.
Yes. It's also problematic because the less funding and resources that the IRS has, the more they audit the poor rather than the rich because it's easier. You can do it automatically and they don't hire lawyers. More than half of the IRS's audits in 2021 targeted taxpayers whose incomes were less than $75,000. In 2024, because of their extra funding, they announced they were planning to drastically ramp up audits of wealthy corporations and people making more than $10 million. CNBC says that the taxes that the rich people evade each year amount to more than $150 billion. That said, easier said than done to get that money, Lockie, because according to the IRS, they only claimed an extra $1 billion so far from the extra audits of wealthy people, and they had like $80 billion invested in them. So not a huge bang for buck. I mean, in fact, if you look at the graph of total collections, it's gone up since the Inflation Reduction Act was signed. That's what gave them the extra funding.
Yeah.
But it's not going up too much more than previously. Have a look between 2012 and 2014. It's that gradient isn't that different. I mean, it's going up a bit. I'm not saying it doesn't help. I'm just saying that the left often it's like a religion to them going, you can just add as much as you want to the IRS and it's just rivers of gold, 10 to 1, 20 to 1. Look at that. Look at that chart. It's not 10 to 1 or 20 to 1. This is after $80 billion was invested in them. But having said that, I mean, look, there's
80 billion, and then I don't know what the math there is.
Yeah.
500.
There's extra 500 million, but that is how much more of that? How much more of the 500 billion is because of the IRA?
And how much of it is? Yeah.
How much is it was going up anyway? Because it just goes up.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially in a time of economic growth, which is what we were just in. So we just don't know. The answer is we don't know. But all I'm saying, I'm just putting that up there just to say to you, like, it's not as cut and dry as you think it is.
No. Okay.
But they still shouldn't be cutting them. That's insane. One more issue. IRS desperately needs to not sack its young workers because as of 2021, more than 60% of the IRS's employees were reaching retirement age over the next 6 years. So they need to replace a lot of those workers. And guess what? Those workers are now going to get sacked because they're new.
Because they're on probation.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to get better because the new IRS commissioner, Billy Long, co-sponsored a bill when he was a House rep to abolish the IRS entirely. So that's not good. Then we've got USAID, which we know there's plenty of sackings there. 1,600 sackings as they fold it into the State Department. More than 10,000 of them have been put on notice that they're in trouble. Rubio announced this week that he supposedly has gone through 9,100 USAID grants worth $15.9 billion and decided to keep 4,100 of those grants worth $4.4 billion. So he's made some cuts there. Also, there were 6,000 multi-year grants with $58 billion left in them. He kept 200 of those 6,000 with $4 billion left in them. Now, to be clear, that's a lie. He didn't go through them one by one like he says in court. I will discuss this when I do go through the DOGE court cases, which we won't today because this is going to be long enough. But at some point in time, I'll go through a DOGE court case and I'll take you through Rubio's attempts to snow the court. But for what it's worth, Atul Gawande has gone through the list of cuts. I can't verify these, but I do trust Atul Gawande, so I'm going to read them out quickly. These are just quotes from him. Number 1, all malaria supplies, protecting 53 million people, mostly children, including bed nets, diagnostics, preventive drugs and treatments, terminated. 2, all tuberculosis programs, including the Global TB Drug Facility, terminated. 3, all supplies of US manufactured emergency food packets for starving children on the brink of death, terminated. 4, USAID's contract supporting deadly outbreak prevention, detection and response, including Ebola and bird flu in 50 countries, terminated. 5, all deployable US teams for earthquake assistance, terminated. 6, all US-backed development programming in Afghanistan, including maternal and child health services and girls' education, terminated. 7, over 1,000 food kitchens in Sudan, a country with almost 25 million people experiencing acute food insecurity, terminated. 8, USAID's contract for supplying essential medicines for maternal and child health in countries worldwide, terminated. 9, services from the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, reaching 350,000 people on HIV treatment, including nearly 10,000 children and more than 10,000 HIV-positive pregnant women, terminated. 10, every USAID program in the former Soviet countries in Central Asia, including health programs to combat rampant tuberculosis along with agricultural programs, terminated. 11. Screening program with the Mexican government to identify illicit drugs like fentanyl being smuggled at US border. Oh, I thought that was relevant. 12. A project in the Democratic Republic of Congo that operates the only source of water for camps with 250,000 displaced people in camps located in the centre of current conflict. So there's a few programs that have been terminated there. You can judge for yourself whether you think they were worth the money saved. FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, about 400 people fired. Now, Duffy, Senator Arse Rocket, has pushed back on those concerns about firing FAA staff at a time when lots of planes are falling out of the sky. Quote, we kept all of the critical safety positions. We actually hired more positions in critical safety, like air traffic controllers, for people to say that. For people to say that because we cut 352 people out of 46,000, that's a risk to safety, give me a break. It's probably a fair call. Many of them were working on radar, landing and navigational equipment for what it's worth. I should also say, I mean, I was being a bit facetious when I said planes are falling out of the sky. There have been a number of fatal plane crashes in the last 6 weeks since Trump took over, but there have actually been fewer air incidents than normal. Just the ones that have happened have been worse. So just put that out there. Correspondence from Genie Odyssey. Hey. Thank you, Genie. Quick question regarding potential cuts to Social Security. From what I understand, the US Social Security system is similar to our compulsory superannuation system in that employers pay a contribution, but in their case, the individual also pays into the system, which is an optional extra for Aussies. How can DOGE or any other entity talk about cuts for Social Security when these entitlements are effectively self-funded, not government-funded? It's a good question.
Good question.
Is it that commentators are getting confused between self-funded retirement saving systems and the taxpayer-funded social welfare system? Some commentators have also said the US government borrowed money from the SSI money to fund government spending. Is that true? If so, what the fuck? Why is this fund not set up like our super in investment funds that earn big bucks for everyone? Well, if you watched the Jessica interview, you know part of the answer to this question already, which is because I asked her about this. First of all, so when we cut Social Security, you're not cutting the actual payments to people. You're cutting the staff. At least these cuts. The cuts in the budget, there are going to be actual payments if they're brave enough to do that, which they're not, so don't worry. But we're talking about staff cuts here, staffers, not what they pay out to pensioners, right? Okay. Agencies or components that provide direct services to citizens, such as Social Security, Medicare, and Veterans Healthcare, shall not implement any proposed ARRPs, so they're sackings, until OMB and OPM certified that plans will have a positive effect on the delivery of such services. That's a memo that went out this week. So, in other words, not only are they not going to cut the payments, but they're not even going to cut staff if that will lead to lesser payments, they say. But to answer your broader question, Social Security money, like the funds, they don't exist. This is what Jessica was talking about. It's a fiction. The money that people pay from Social Security goes into consolidated revenue, just like a tax, essentially. It can't be rated. I talked to Jessica about exactly this. Like I said, you can hear what she has to say. But you ask, why is this fund not set up like our super investment funds? And I have some great news for you, Jeannie. Congratulations. You are a Republican. Because Republicans have been trying to do exactly that for the last 50 years, I'd say. George W. Bush pushed really hard on that 20 years ago in 2005, and it blew up in his face. It's half the reason why he became so unpopular. The other half is Iraq. But yeah, no, that really blew up in his face. They called that privatizing Social Security, to take the funds and investing them in the stock market with the private funds. Now you might ask, well, why would Democrats resist that? when you make so much more money from private investment than just leaving it with the government. And you're right, you can make a lot of money from the private investment. That's the whole point of the privatization. But the reason why Democrats have resisted is because they're scared of what happens if there's a stock market crash and hundreds of millions of people lose their retirement money. And that is not an unreasonable concern.
Yeah, fair concern.
When you're talking about pensions, you want safety first. And the American financial system, it's a bit more Wild West than Australia is. So you can agree or disagree with that logic. I honestly think both sides have a fair argument to make. But those are the battle lines right there. The only thing I'd say about sackings, it's increasingly becoming an issue that the people who get sacked are veterans because 28% of all federal workers are military veterans versus 5% in the private sector. Yeah. And you might go, well, why is that? Why is there 5 times as many military veterans in the public service? There's a couple of reasons. Number one, they look after you a little bit more if you're not all there. After you've got injuries, you've got handicaps, you may have trauma. Like it's like working in public service often is not as demanding as working in the private sector.
Not anymore.
Well, that's right. Now there's trauma. But that's one thing. Another thing is the public sector is more likely to hire disabled workers, and a lot of veterans are disabled for obvious reasons. And that's another thing. 36% of the veterans in civil service are disabled or have a serious health condition. So you do the maths. That's quite a lot of largely unemployable veterans who are about to be sacked. House Democrats estimate for what it's worth 6,000 veterans have already lost their jobs. And then I just want to go through the logic of sackings to finish off this section. I found the reasons for these sackings quite problematic. Like I already said, the probational thing is bad. Also, their reasons that they gave are obviously pretextual. Generally, DOGE just sent them letters saying they were fired for poor performance, when DOGE clearly has no idea about their performance.
Yeah.
They're like 20 kids or whatever. They're not looking at their performance.
No.
How would they even know? They're looking at data entries. They don't know about people's performances. Like some employees were fired for poor performance despite receiving only excellent performance evaluations. Some were fired for poor performance before they started working. So it's bullshit. It's a pretext. DOGE didn't even know what the nuclear guys' jobs were. How they had the name written in front of them. How would they know what people's performance is like? Anyway, there's more sackings coming too. By March 13, agencies are supposed to submit their plans for more sackings. One more thing, we should keep all this info in context. The federal workforce is not actually necessarily overstaffed. DOGE is just assuming they are, and they can just sack because there's just too many people. It's definitely not why there are huge deficits. I talked to Jessica about that as well. That's about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But look at this graph. Federal public employees as a percentage of all US workers. It doesn't look like that's a problem, the number of federal employees, does it? It's quite low at just under 2%. It's they might be able to lose one or two, but the thing is, it often costs more. It often costs more to sack civilian workers. And the reason for that is because, number one, you get to a point where if you sack them, you need to replace them with a contractor, and they cost more. But also, according to Trump's executive orders, and we've got to trust them, he'd never lie, Biden imposed $1.7 trillion in regulatory costs on American business. Now, there are conservative groups who say even more, like the American Action Forum said it was $1.8 trillion. Whatever, I don't know about their numbers, but it's a lot in terms of regulatory load. Now, you might feel every single one of those regulations was worth the regulatory load. I mean, there are thousands of these regulations. I don't know the answer to this, and neither do you. But someone who has 17 months on their hands might be able to go through them. And if you recall, Vivek Ramaswamy suggested exactly this, that DOGE should go through regulations and create efficiency for the entire country.
Yeah, but
not
that's
just
why,
for the federal government.
That's why he's gone.
That's why he's gone. That's why he's gone. But anyway, honestly, I thought that was, I mean, this is why I'm not in DOGE as well. I thought that wasn't a bad idea. Like, I think it'd be good for DOGE to go through regulations and try and recommend regulations to be eliminated by the government through the proper process.
Because I think the only similarity between you and DOGE is the fact that you hire a 20-year-old.
We both only hire 20-year-olds. Yes.
Other than that,
yeah, there is a bit of a
you're not quite a fit.
No. But here's the thing. When you sack people, and you sack too many people, there's no one left over to kill regulations for you. Killing regulations aren't easy. Remember what I said about the congestion pricing, where the thing you got to go through to get it up? You got to go through. You got to first have a proposed rule, and that's the same when you want to repeal it. You need a proposed rule to revoke the rule. Then you need to have a comment period. Then you need to have a cost-benefit analysis, potentially environmental study as well. Then you have a final rule. It takes at least a year, sometimes 2 years. If you don't do it properly, the courts are gonna reverse it. You're not going to be able to revoke the rule. So you need the staff to do it properly. It's actually quite staff intensive. It's very resource intensive. It's not easy to do. That's why Trump, he was, in his first term, he lost 57% of all legal challenges to major regulations. As in, he would put a regulation up either to repeal something else or in its own right. It would get challenged, 57% of the time he'd lose because he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's. It'll be even worse now because they'll be under more resource pressure because of all these cuts. So he's not going to be able to cut regulations, and he's going to lose a lot of efficiency there. So that is something I'm not sure that it's even occurred to them. That is actually a problem, in my view, if you care about efficiency, which obviously is a big if. Also, remember all those Supreme Court rulings last year undermining agencies, making it hard for them to pass rules. This obviously now affects Trump when he's trying to revoke previous rules. So he's going to make it that much harder to revoke a rule. Like they've fucked him. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trump repeals almost no regulations during this entire period because I don't think he's going to have staff. I think it's going to be too hard. But yeah, whatever. And also, by the way, all those agencies that he took away their staff, that he took away the boards of directors, like the CFPB, the EEOC, the National Labour Relations Board, the Employment Commission, whatever they're called. That's the EEOC. Now none of them have quorum to meet anymore because he sacked their directors, which means they can't overturn any of their own rulings. Their rulings are going to stand. They're impossible to overturn. They're going to last forever until someone fills up the board again, the board of directors. So he's screwing himself. Okay, so that's the end of that section. Now, I've got a bit of a potpourri about just general thoughts about DOGE, so I'm just going to just throw them out here. Things like, basically, this is why I don't like DOGE. For a number of reasons. Number one, I hate the lack of transparency. It really pisses me off. Back in November last year, Elon Musk made a big show of saying there should be no need for FOI, freedom of information requests from anyone at all. This is what he said. This is a clip.
I think the strong bias with respect to government information should be to make it available to the public. Like it should be, let's be as transparent as possible, like fully transparent, unless it's like a massive risk to the country, like it's like, we don't want to give say exact instructions on how to make a nuclear bomb or something like that, but unless there's a genuine risk to the country, all information in the government should be public.
So that he's staying very strongly there for freedom of information. He wasn't talking about DOGE in particular. He was talking about the entire government. But, DOGE is part of the government. Then last month, he tweets out, all aspects of the government must be fully transparent and accountable to people. So he hasn't changed his mind. He's still all about transparency. And then at that press conference in the Oval Office last month, he said it again. He's not changing his mind. He's sticking to this. He's all about transparency.
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the DOGE organization.
But to be fair, he's talking about receipts there. He's talking about the receipts of DOGE. But transparency is transparency. I'm sorry, chump. If you want transparency, it's transparency across the board.
Yeah.
The Trump White House has declared all records produced and received by DOGE to be presidential records. And you go, what does that mean? What that means is they are ineligible for freedom of information requests. So he's right. There's no need for freedom of information requests because they're impossible for DOGE. So don't bother. No need to try. You will lose. And you know what? I reckon there are some questions about transparency. Certainly some questions I'd like answered. Like, for instance, who's in charge of DOGE? That's a question I'd like answered. And what's Musk's relationship to DOGE? And what power does he have? These are all good questions, I feel. And the answer is Kafkaesque in its lack of transparency. Obviously, Elon Musk is in charge. Like, Trump has said it explicitly. I signed an order creating the Department of Government Efficiency and put a man named Elon Musk in charge. It's pretty clear. But they don't say that in court when this becomes a legal problem. In court, they say that Elon is a senior advisor to the president and that he holds no actual formal authority to make government decisions himself. Has anyone told Elon that? Also, he isn't a DOGE employee or its administrator. He's just an employee of the White House. I mean, this is patent bullshit. But it gets worse. As a result of that revelation, Judge Kolar Kodali, in one of the 28 cases against the White House that have been juggled at the moment, it's going to be a long DOGE court update one of these days. 28 cases at once. Repeatedly asked the government's lawyer, who is the DOGE service administrator? Because in the executive order, they're in charge. Who is it? The lawyer said they couldn't say.
Whoa.
The judge was not impressed. Quote from the judge. It does seem to me if you have people that are not authorised to carry out some of these functions that they're carrying out, that does raise an issue. I would hope that by now we would know who is the administrator, who is the acting administrator, and what authority do they have. And then this was the next day.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about a federal judge yesterday was saying that they didn't know who the DOGE administrator was and was asking the lawyer for the administration who it was, and the lawyer responded, I don't know the answer to that. Can you tell us who the administrator of DOGE is?
Again, I've been asked and answered this question. Elon Musk is overseeing DOGE. There are No, Elon Musk is a special government employee, which I've also been asked and have answered that question as well. There are career officials at DOGE. There are political appointees at DOGE. I'm not going to reveal the name of that individual from this podium. I'm happy to follow up and provide that to you. But we've been incredibly transparent about the way that DOGE is working. John.
Incredibly transparent.
Yeah. I'm not going to reveal. That's how transparent I am.
Incredibly transparent. Look. To be fair to her, she is being incredibly transparent.
Yes, yeah.
But not in the way that I think she means. So transparent. Just ask them anything. They're not going to answer. But you can ask them. Ask them anything. After that press conference, the White House revealed that the acting administrator is one Amy Gleason, a former official of the old USDS, when it was the digital service, not DOGE. She was acting administrator. She was a digital service expert for the USDS between 2018 and 2021 under the last Trump administration. Most recently, she worked as chief product officer at Nashville healthcare firm Russell Street Ventures. It's not even clear that she's a member of the government.
Russell Street Ventures.
Russell Street Ventures.
Sure.
Don't look too carefully into that. I don't think that's
anything.
That's adding much.
Yeah.
It's not clear that she knows her role.
Oh.
She might not know if she has it. When reporters rang her immediately, they found that she was in Mexico. The day after they rang her, her LinkedIn had not been updated to reflect the new role.
Interesting.
Maybe she just got it. Maybe she literally had just gotten that role and she hadn't had time to update her LinkedIn. That makes sense.
LinkedIn's not the first thing I'm thinking of.
Maybe there was a different
acting
administrator until just then. Why don't we see what old Leavitt's got to say about this?
So Amy Gleason has been the DOGE administrator for quite some time, I believe several weeks, maybe a month. I'm not actually sure of the specific timeline. She's a career official. She's doing her job as the administrator of this organization. I know everybody's very interested in her name and who she is and what she does. There's a lot of people who work for the federal government. They're just trying to do their jobs, and, you know, that's what she's doing.
DOGE staffers told us yesterday that they found out about her being the administrator yesterday. Why is that?
You have to ask them. They're clearly unaware. I don't know.
So
there's a lot of unawareness going on.
A lot of unawareness, but you say that. You say that.
I do.
But when she was asked whether the DOGE employees even knew that she was their boss, Amy Gleason, Leavitt said, everybody knew. And we said who she was to all of you because you are hounds in the media who are so obsessed with this for some reason.
It's gaslighting.
It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And you know what that is not? That is not one of the most transparent organizations ever, Elon Musk. It's definitely not. That's my first problem with DOGE. My second problem with DOGE is that it's been completely misapplied.
Yeah.
I've talked about this a number of times, how I thought they should be spending time just reading Inspector General reports and then applying them.
Yeah.
Like using their talents and their skills and their resources.
And their time.
Their time to do things that normal Inspector Generals and government accountability officers don't have the resources and time and skills to do. They'd be really useful then. Or they could be actually trying to make genuine cuts. Or they could be trying to survey regulations, like I just said. Every now and then they do something good, and I get my hopes up. Like I saw the post, and I thought, oh, this is great. There's a post that said that the Treasury account symbol is an identification code linking a Treasury payment to a budget line item, which is a standard financial process. In the federal government, the TAS field was optional for $4.7 trillion in payments and was often left blank, making traceability almost impossible. As of Saturday, this is now a required field, increasing insight into where the money's actually going. That's great.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's nice.
That's the kind of boring drudgery that actually, you know what? It makes the government more efficient. It makes the government more accountable. It makes fraud more detectable. Great. Love it.
4.7 trillion. Great.
Love it. They're not doing much of that, though. Tell you another thing they should be doing, they should be going where the money is. Like I talked about the Jessica, but also, even apart from that, the Defense Department, little thing called the Defense Department. You know, there might be some cuts there.
Maybe.
$850 billion budget, failed its 7th audit in a row in November. Why don't you guys do an audit of the Defense Department? How about that? It's the only major federal agency that's never passed an audit.
Never.
Literally never. And it's not like there aren't things to audit there. A 2023 CBS investigation found that private contractors overcharge the government on almost everything. Literally, that's the quote. Almost everything. And they receive about half the budget, private contractors. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about $52,000 trash cans, $14,000 toilet seats, $3,300 ball bearings, $1,200 coffee cups. These are all individual news
It's
stories.
almost as much as the PEP store.
Almost. Don't tell Lyndon Besser. Even now, they're still getting into trouble for this shit. A Navy contractor was only just a couple of months ago sentenced to 15 years in prison after bribing dozens of officials with cash, luxury items, and prostitutes, trying to cover up overcharging. This is what awaits DOGE in the Defense Department. Why aren't they there? Elon Musk.
So much money.
Elon Musk is a huge jet plane enthusiast. He loves warplanes. And he's a huge nerd about planes in general, which is one of the reasons I said sending him to the FAA might not necessarily be a problem. There is a program, you might not have heard of this, but some of the Peppers will have. There is a program in the Defense Department that's called the F-35 plane program, which is worth $1.7 trillion, this contract. And it's been running over budget, it's been screwing up, and it's $1.7 trillion. Why doesn't Elon have a look at that? Yeah, maybe that might be worth running your eyes over, Elon. Now, to be clear, Pete Hegseth has said he would welcome DOGE. He's calling for 8% cuts every year for 5 years. So that's a lot of cuts. Okay. That's like, you accumulate them, that's like 50%.
Yeah.
So it's not like he doesn't want cuts, but I think his definition of cuts is different to my definition of cuts.
I think I know where this is going.
He thinks the cuts should all be just woke things. He thinks the Defense Department is too woke. And he thinks there's a lot of cuts there to get rid of woke stuff.
He thinks there's 8% of cuts for 5 years on woke stuff.
Well, listen to the man. Look at a lot of the climate programs that have been pursued at the Defense Department. The Defense Department is not in the business of climate change, solving the global thermostat. We're in the business of deterring and winning wars. So things like that, we want to look for and find efficiencies. There's plenty of places where we want the keen eye of DOGE.
I forgot that climate change was woke.
Yeah, it's very woke.
I always forget that one.
Yeah. As you slide under the table in frustration, just reflect on how woke you are, my little greenie friend. Pete Hegseth has more to say about this too.
You're refocusing, that's a key word, our existing budget away from the Biden priorities that, frankly, were all over the map to President Trump's priorities of building a lethal fighting force. The media wants to call these exclusively cuts, but it's the opposite, of course, as always is the case. I've got the memo right here. It's clear as a bell. Now, beginning right away, we are pulling around 8% or $50 billion from the Biden budget. We're planning, this is planning for this year, that we will move away from woke Biden-era non-lethal programs and instead spend that money on President Trump's America First, Peace Through Strength priorities for our national budget. First of all, remember, this is all planning. We're asking the services to plan. So it's not a cut. It's refocusing and reinvesting existing funds into building a force that protects you, the American people.
That clip is clear. He doesn't want to lose any budget.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah,
He
great.
just wants to take it out of, it was a cut from woke climate change
and then
stuff,
put it into
bullets. That's what he wants to do. Right? So in my world, the budget would be less after you went through it with a razor blade.
With a cut.
Yes. DOGE, in my view, need to pull their finger out and look at some real inefficiency. There you go. It's right there. And it just as a general rule of thumb, this is what they're doing a lot. They're not looking at fraud. They're looking at wokeness and DEI and things that they just disagree with rather than things that are fraudulent and wasteful. Their definition of wasteful are things they disagree with. And you can't cut it. I mean, Trump's president now. If he wants to get rid of it, that's fine. But you don't need DOGE to do that. You can do that with legislation. DOGE is meant to be there to make the place more efficient. That's different. That's not policy. They're doing policy.
Unless it's more efficient for Trump not to have to do the policy.
Well,
but
I'm sure it's more efficient for him to do nothing. Sure. Anyway, That annoys me. It also annoys me that they're so incompetent. When they set up their website, it got hacked immediately. One hacker wrote, "This is a joke of a .gov site."
That's so good.
in their hacking.
Yeah.
That's a screen cap you're looking at there.
That's awesome.
And there's another screen cap coming up.
Yeah.
These, inverted commas, experts left their database open. Roro.
Oh, yeah.
The old Roro. You were Roro.
Roro's the name.
Roro?
Roro's a massive hacker.
Oh, really? I didn't even realize. I thought it was like a Roro.
Roro the hacker. Sorry.
I had no idea.
Oh,
right. But I'm sure Roro's called Roro.
Oh, wait.
What?
Maybe I'm wrong here. I had thought that Roro was their name. Maybe they are saying Rotro.
Are you saying that I understand the youth of today better than you do?
You do? Yes, absolutely.
Look, I don't know. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm going to assume.
Either way.
In my own head, every time I see that, I'm going to be thinking,
I thought that was someone giving credit for their work. Because it's that poorly designed that I can hack this and sign my name and they still never find me. I thought it was that kind of sass. Okay.
Next thing I hate about them is and obviously they're incredibly incompetent with things like sacking people and trying to rehire them and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
They're still not following proper process. And I know you guys think I'm anal about this. I'm going to explain to you why it matters. All right. They should not be making a single cut or denying a single grant or firing a single person off their own bat. They can be suggesting things to agency heads or to Congress. These people have the authority. All right. They shouldn't. They have no authority to do any of that. Let me tell you why this matters. I know you're wondering why. It's not just because I'm anal, even though I am. But you recall the stoush over PEPFAR. PEPFAR is the AIDS initiative from George W. Bush that saved 25 million lives. And it got frozen, just like everything else got frozen when Trump came in.
Yes.
As soon as DOGE moved in, they froze everything. Now, Rubio then said, it was controversial because people cited PEPFAR and said, well, what about the AIDS initiative? People are going to die. And Rubio said, you know what? Fine. We're going to remove the freeze over all life-saving grants.
Oh, I remember this
Remember
part.
this?
Yeah.
All life-saving programs will not be frozen. And then the PEPFAR people said, hey, it's still frozen. And then Rubio, I read this quote at the time, I'll read it again.
Yep.
Rubio said, I issued a blanket waiver that said if this is life-saving programs, okay, if it's providing food or medicine or anything that's saving lives and is immediate and urgent, you're not included in the freeze. I don't know how much more clear we can be than that. I would say if some organization is receiving funds from the United States and does not know how to apply a waiver, then I have real questions about the competence of that organization, or I wonder whether they're deliberately sabotaging it for purposes of making a political point. So he was accusing the PEPFAR people of either being grossly incompetent or of deliberately killing Africans in order to take the cup off Adams and put it on Rubio. And that is what he was accusing them of, explicitly. I didn't quite know what was going on then. I remember some people saying, well, it's because they're so incompetent that they allowed the PEPFAR people to go, but they didn't unfreeze the contractors or the suppliers and so they didn't have a full chain of supply. That was what the theory was at the time.
Sure.
We now know better. Let me read you a quote from the Washington Post this week. I've got a few dots in here, but every word I'm reading is from the Washington Post. Rubio had decreed that certain critical programs, such as aid to Ukraine and Syria and costs related to the PEPFAR program to combat HIV in Africa, would continue to be funded. Several times, US aid managers prepared packages of these payments and got the agency's interim leaders to sign off on them with support from the White House. But each time, using their new gatekeeping powers and clearly acting on orders from Musk or one of his lieutenants, Farragut and Kleiger, their two DOGE kids, would veto the payments, a process that required them to manually check boxes in the payment system one at a time, the same tedious way you probably pay your bills online.
Whoa.
So they're doing it deliberately.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, AIDS clinics shuttered and staff found themselves stranded in unstable conditions such as Congo. One night, a staff tried yet again to assemble a list of necessary payments. The agency's computer network went down for 2 hours. When it came back on, members of the IT team whispered to colleagues to be wary. Whoa. During the outage, they believed spyware had been installed on the network to monitor communication amongst employees. Finally, on the second Saturday in February, the 2 IT guys from DOGE shut everyone else out of the payment system entirely. They became the only people who could even see the payments waiting to be approved. Hardly any of the essential funding promised by Rubio had been processed as of last week. So what just happened there is DOGE unilaterally cancelled funding over the head of the Secretary of State.
Whoa.
And they didn't even tell him. They just secretly decided, for whatever reason, that they were going to kill a bunch of Africans of AIDS. And after Rubio had specifically told them to allow it to happen, and it was controversial. And Rubio backed over it and said, no, that should definitely happen. That should be happening. It must be because of them. They must be sabotaging the process. And these pricks, the whole time, were doing it not accidentally, doing it 100% intentionally, going out of their way to do it.
What the hell?
That is why you need proper processes. Like, in my view, that is just about the biggest scandal of the Trump administration so far. I can't believe it hasn't gotten more coverage. Like, the only reason why no one knows about this is, I mean, this is Washington Post, but it's just one of many stories. The only reason that people don't know about it is because there's 1,000 other controversies. They just get drowned.
Yeah.
In fact, on that note, I'll put in the homework for you. You're not going to believe this. Do you remember Riedl Balco, who was the first person we interviewed on PEEP this year? He was like a criminal justice guy. He, in his blog or his Substack, he just did a piece recently where he went through 5 days, this is from last week, 5 days of last week, and just cited every outrageous thing that happened. Now, I don't agree with every single thing that he thinks is outrageous, but there's like 50. It's absolutely insane the number of, and each of them would be the biggest controversy of the week for Joe Biden. Possibly in the month, every single one of them. And there were 50 of them, at least 50. I mean, I haven't counted. There were a huge number of them. There was just 5 days. It's just the fire hose is just blowing our face off at the moment. Have a look. I'll put in the homework. Have a look at that article. They've got the links there. You can follow them all. It's just extraordinary how much shit is going down. And so this stuff gets buried. This was actually part of the 5 days. I don't think he even covered this. Anyway, this is why you need proper process, because otherwise this shit happens. And it just makes you so angry. So yeah, I hate that about DOGE as well. Next.
They've got a kill count.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely have a kill count. A deliberate kill count. That's the most important thing for me, because I can see how when you're rushing and breaking things and and you're incompetent, you don't know what you're doing. I could see you can make mistakes.
That still kill people.
Yeah, still kill people. I'm not saying it's great, but but that's a whole different
thing too.
That's a whole different problem.
Manually selecting
the problem of manually
everyone.
Ticking boxes one by one to deprive funding that the Secretary of State ordered to save lives.
That is malicious.
Yeah.
Wow.
The next thing is that conflicts of interest are a huge problem. Now, we told you about Elon Musk surveying the system at the FAA, right, a couple of PEPs ago. And I was saying, I was trying to give him a chance. I was trying to be a nice guy.
Yeah, you were.
Trying to be generous, going, look, you know what? Elon's got experience in running a space agency there would be some overlap with an aeronautical agency in terms of the equipment and so forth, takeoffs, and like I could see overlap there.
Yeah.
He certainly has experience running a large organization. He's experienced working with engineers. He's got relevant experience.
Yeah.
I don't think he's the number one guy I'd go to, but it's not stupid to go to him. I would also go to actual airplane experts rather than Elon Musk. But if you're going to talk to 10 people, I wouldn't care if he was one of them. Like, I thought that was fair enough. Right? Cool. Wow. He went and surveyed their system, and this is what he found. On February 24, he found that the Verizon system is not working and so is putting air travelers at serious risk. Well, that sounds bad. Sounds really
Serious
bad.
risk. Uh-oh.
Soon after, though, he clarified that when he was talking about an ancient system, he wasn't talking about the Verizon system. He was referring to a system that was created by L3 Harris, a defense contractor, and that Verizon's new technology was meant to replace them, but it just wasn't operational yet. You see, the Verizon got their contract in 2023, so they're still revving it up and setting it up and applying it. Like, gradually they're transforming the system. As Verizon spokesperson Kevin Israel said, they're working on building the next generation system for the FAA, and they're at the beginning of a multi-year contract to replace antiquated legacy systems. That's what they're doing. So it's not quite there yet. So it's not fair for Musk to say their system's putting travelers at serious risk. It's the previous system. Verizon is there to fix it. Anyway, the next day, we read that the Federal Aviation Administration is close to cancelling a $2.4 billion contract to overhaul a communication system that serves as the backbone of the nation's air traffic control system.
Oh, no.
Instead, they're awarding it to Starlink instead.
Great. Cool. Nice.
The day after that,
why does it matter anymore?
The day after that, we're hearing from Bloomberg that Musk has approved the shipment of 4,000 Starlink terminals to the FAA for potential testing.
I'm glad he was somehow able to get his hands on all that so quickly. 3
terminals already being tested in the Atlantic Sea in New Jersey and 2 in Alaska. Starlink's eventually going to deploy 4,000 terminals across the country over the course of 12 to 18 months. That's probably about the amount of time it will take Verizon to implement their replacement system. But they've just been sacked, so whatever. Let's remember, this was all just after a few hundred people were sacked from the FAA to save money. Let's remember that. Because, when they cancel Verizon's contract, there's going to be a payout. That's not going to be efficient.
No, or cheap.
No, it's not going to be efficient or cheap. It might not, in the end, it might cost a lot more money to do that. But you know what will change? Elon Musk will get a few $1 billion.
And the ability to turn off Starlink when he wants.
There's that as well.
Not that he'd ever do that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
sorry.
This is a conflict of interest. This is what I'm saying. Hey, look, to be fair.
But he's transparent. It's fine.
He's
transparent because
well,
I can see
once again,
that it's a conflict of interest.
Once again, he's very transparent. It's transparent what's happening. To be fair, I'm not knocking Starlink, even though a lot of people do, by the way. But I don't know. Like
I don't know.
There's a number of people who say the problem with Starlink is that when it's a cloudy day or something, it gets in the way. Like you need line of sight. It's better to have cables. If you can get cables, and Verizon I think was cables. If you can get cables, you should have cables. I don't know. I'm not weighing in on the technical. I'm not an engineer. I'm not even American. I'm not going to weigh in on that. I haven't even looked into it, right? I'm just saying this. If Starlink's better, and it may well be, Elon Musk shouldn't be making the decision. No. Someone else should be making the decision.
No, he should not.
It's no one in DOGE should be making the decision either. Someone who has got nothing to do with DOGE or Elon Musk should be making the decision. That's all I'm saying. And if they choose for Starlink, then so be it. Another example for you. The NHTSA is America's premier highway safety agency. It's in charge of investigating crashes of driverless cars. I wonder if you can see where this is going.
Oh, great. I was like, highways, boring company? No, okay, we're going, yeah.
NHTSA has mandated that Tesla report the crash data on their self-driving cars. Elon Musk disagrees. He'd like to keep that to himself.
No, we will not.
Interestingly, that's been a battle that's been going for a few years, but I think that battle's over because DOGE just slashed half the jobs of the unit that oversees the safety of autonomous vehicles. One of the engineers who was just sacked said that if the question is, will this affect the federal government's ability to understand the safety case behind Tesla's vehicles, then yes, it will. The amount of people in the federal government who are able to understand this adequately is very small. Now, it's almost non-existent. Conflict of interest, I think. And this, I mean, look, we've already talked about Dave, all the contracts he's had over the years, $38 billion in contracts over the last few decades from the government I'm talking about. In 2024 alone, his company's received $6.3 billion in commitments from state and local governments. That's probably an undercount because defense funding is often classified. Look, he's received billions and billions of dollars, okay, tens of billions of dollars, and he's now cutting everyone else's contracts and taking them himself. Which leads me to my biggest problem with DOGE. My biggest problem with DOGE is Elon Musk. Let me go through this.
Where to begin?
Super hackish, number one.
Yeah.
He tweeted, do you remember the 60 Minutes story, the worst lawsuit ever?
Yeah.
The one about the way where they 60 Minutes ran an interview where they put the second half of an answer on their interview, and in a teaser, they ran the first half of the answer.
Yeah.
That was what they did.
Scandalous.
There was an edit. In an interview that was 3 times as long as their allotted time. There was an edit. And this is what Elon Musk had to say recently, after that video had come out proving that. 60 Minutes are the biggest liars in the world. They engage in deliberate deception to interfere with the last election. They deserve a long prison sentence, he said.
All of 60 Minutes.
Yeah, they all do. All of them. And a lot longer than 60 minutes, their prison sentence, let me assure you. Arguing that means one of 3 things. Number 1, Elon Musk has a Swiss cheese brain, doesn't understand anything, too stupid to be in his position. I don't think that's the case. 2, he's so partisan he can't think straight. Maybe. 3, he's so dishonest he should be not anywhere near a position of authority. Ding, 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 ding. That's my choice.
Yeah.
A mixture between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I would say.
Pick your poison.
Although having said that, just a little aside, there was a little controversy recently where some idiot called himself Elon Musk's biographer and said, I've seen no evidence.
Yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah, I have seen no evidence that he has an IQ above 110. What, did you look at his IQ test results? Like, what's your evidence of his IQ? It's so ridiculous. But anyway, but I mean, as a general thumb, anyone who's obsessed with IQ probably isn't very smart. That's usually a pretty good sign. Like that, which is why I note that every time Trump talks about IQ. But anyway, just as an aside, if you're one of these people going, Elon Musk is an idiot, and I constantly point out him doing stupid shit, like constantly. I don't know if you've hung around.
We've got a whole sting for it.
We do, we have. I don't know if you've ever hung around a super intelligent person before, but I've been lucky to be in educational environments and environments where I've been surrounded by really smart people, and some of them are fucking morons. And they're really smart. They're geniuses, but they're morons as well. Like, all because you're really good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at everything. Like, there are people who are generalists. You know, to be honest, I'm a bit of a generalist. I kind of like in terms of like I can pick things up really quickly and I can study any subject, and I like that. Like, that's always been my thing. If you give me a book, I will learn it. I'll spit it out, right?
Sick.
Doesn't matter what the topic is, that's fine, right? But then there are people who are specialists who, rather than being generally, you know, not pretty good, they're just geniuses at one thing. Elon Musk is one of those people. I don't know what that thing is. I'm not saying he's a genius engineer, okay? I know he's done lots of stupid shit as an engineer, Discord, I know. But maybe it's just running companies. Maybe it's knowing where to invest. Maybe it's knowing how to motivate people. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's communicating to a special kind of worker to get the best out of them. I don't know what it is, but it's something he's good at because it's just too much of a coincidence that he keeps on succeeding in things that other people aren't succeeding in. And like, it's just to write off as a coincidence or luck is bullshit. He's good at something, okay? He's clearly good at something. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't stop him being shit at a lot of other things. It doesn't mean that he's not a genius. It just means that he has serious weaknesses. That's what it means. And he shouldn't be anywhere near a position of authority because of those weaknesses, is number one. Number two, he's defensive and conspiratorial. Next example I'm giving you here is when he cops some shit about some of his cuts. He says the real reason so many Democrats are upset about entitlements, Social Security, medical fraud investigations is that they're using your taxpayer money as handouts to attract and retain illegal immigrants. They're future voters. That's what it's all about. Truth.
Truth.
No. The reason they're worried about entitlement investigations is because they don't trust you and they think when you say fraud, what you mean are things that Democrats like and things that are going to cost money that, someone who actually needs that money might want. That's what they think. They think you're full of shit, Elon. They think you're untrustworthy and unreliable. And they don't trust you to do fraud investigations. I think they'd be very open with someone who they trust to conduct a fraud investigation for Social Security or medical or Medicaid, but not you. That's the problem. And we've talked before about how illegal immigrants are never going to become voters, which is what he thinks this is all about, because they need to be made legal, and that's never going to happen while the filibuster exists at the very least.
Yeah.
Next, vengeful. Ron Howard posted an article by the newsagent Reuters, headline, Musk's DOGE cuts based more on political ideology than real cost savings so far. An hour later, Elon Musk posts a reply. I wonder how much money Reuters has gained from the government. Let's find out.
Jeez.
So that's his
petty.
So that's his revenge for an article he doesn't like, which, by the way, was accurate. Later that night, he tweets out, Reuters was paid millions of dollars by the US government for large-scale social deception. Quote, that's literally what it says on the purchase order. They're a total scam. Just wow. So rather than questioning why the government would be paying Reuters for social deception, he puts up a screenshot of a US government webpage showing a contract between the Defense Department and Thomson Reuters Special Services for active social engineering defense and large-scale social deception. Okay, this is what he didn't say. What he didn't say is that the contract was awarded in 2018 under the Trump administration. It wasn't awarded to Reuters, the news agency. It was awarded to the IT division of Thomson Reuters Special Services, which operates separately from the Reuters newsroom. It's been working on federal projects for decades. It was awarded for researching automated defense against social engineering attacks, which is cyber attacks, basically. The tactics cyber attackers use to gain access to secure networks. He says it wasn't covered as part of the DOGE investigation. Actually, there are public payments for years. So what happened here? There was no DOGE investigation. He got someone to do Oppo research on Reuters.
Yeah.
Because he didn't like their article, which was accurate. Then Trump got involved. All the Musk reply guys dunked on Reuters, and it was also thoroughly debunked in the news as well. So you'd think he'd be embarrassed about the fact that they showed him up as being full of shit. Hours after that, he tweets about it again. Reuters was literally paid by the federal government for large-scale social deception. That's literally what it says on the official government documents. He's vengeful.
He doesn't understand the word literally.
Well, there's that as well. But I'll say that for a different point.
Well, maybe he does, but yeah.
My point is, he is vengeful, he's vindictive, and he shouldn't be near a position of authority. He's also directed by morons on Twitter. Have you heard about how Trump and Elon Musk are going to Fort Knox?
I have.
Yeah, how they're going to examine all the gold in Fort Knox.
Go and have a look, yeah.
Now, you know that Scott Bessent, who is Trump's Treasury Secretary, has explicitly told them,
don't.
You don't need to do that.
Guys, you'll be fine.
He's told them that it was checked on September 30.
Yeah.
He told them, quote, we do an audit every year, the Treasury Department. All the gold is there. He told them.
Yeah.
Their own Treasury Secretary. Why would they do this? It's because this dipshit called Zero Hedge on Twitter tweeted Musk, it would be great if Elon Musk could take a look inside Fort Knox just to make sure the 4,580 tons of US gold is there. Last time anyone looked was 50 years ago in 1974. Elon Musk goes, oh, surely it's reviewed at least every year. Scott Bessent didn't reply on Twitter, I guess. And so now Elon Musk and Donald Trump are going to go to personally check the gold in Fort Knox themselves. They're directed by morons.
It will be an awesome photo shoot, though.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful. But my point remains, he shouldn't be in a position of authority.
Awesome for them, not awesome actually.
Also, he's so gullible. Someone tweets out a picture of a bunch of masked people wielding axes. There's the picture right there. And a breaking image released of the migrant mob that stormed a Birmingham hospital armed with axes and blades. The story is largely buried on mainstream media. If the far right had done it, this story would be everywhere. The UK's on life support. We need a new government. Wow, that's scary. Elon Musk responds with that. He passes it on. Says, what happened here? I'll tell you what happened. What happened is that Christopher Nolan made a great movie called The Dark Knight Rises. And trolls on Twitter know that you are fucking gullible, Elon. And so they made sure you saw that. And you bit because
that's from The Dark Knight?
That's from The Dark Knight Rises.
Great. That's so funny.
That's where that's from. The man is so gullible. Once again, it doesn't mean he's a moron across the board. It doesn't mean he's not a genius. It doesn't mean he's not good at some things. He's not good at those things. And I want, if someone is going to take instructions from Twitter, I want them to be very discerning about what instructions they're taking. He's not. One more reason he should not be near a position of authority. Finally, the man is a world-class attention whore. While he was embarrassing himself on stage at CPAC with that chainsaw.
Oh my, yeah.
Come on, play some, Lockie. Just go for it.
It's like nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like legalized comedy.
That was too much.
Yeah, I didn't want too much of it. Okay, a split second would have done, but whatever. Grimes was tweeting him at the same time, saying, please respond. Grimes is his ex-partner. Please respond about our child's medical crisis. I'm sorry to do this publicly, but it is no longer acceptable to ignore this situation. This requires immediate attention. And then she said, if you don't want to talk to me, can you please designate or hire someone who can so that we can move forward on solving this? This is urgent, Elon. She's begging for his attention on Twitter because she can't get it. She later said that he wasn't returning her phone calls, wasn't turning up to meetings, and she thought this was the only way she could get in touch with him. Turned out her tweets were shadow banned, so then she just gave up. This is the mother of his child. And you know what? That was only
one
a
of
week.
Four.
Yeah. That was only, now one
Mothers.
of 5.
Sorry, yeah,
because
right, yeah.
that was only a week after another woman who had text messages that very much suggested she was having an affair with Elon Musk was trying to reach Elon about her pregnancy to him. On Twitter, she was trying to reach him because she couldn't get in touch with him any other way. Someone who is that addicted to the limelight and that negligent of their own duty and obligations, that's not a person who I want to trust with carte blanche powers to do whatever the hell he likes, which is what DOGE is.
Yeah.
Once again, these are all the reasons why I don't want Elon Musk anywhere near a position of authority. I think that will do, Lockie. Court cases next time round. You'll notice I didn't mention Ukraine or Zelensky. because that's PEP 200, baby.
That is PEP 200. It is a gift from the forces that be for PEP 200.
Yeah, we got Richard Cook, we got Bill Wyman. Dave's in America. He's doing research. No, he's not. But yeah, it's gonna be those two for PEP 200. We'll be covering the meeting in the Oval Office. We'll also be covering Bezos. We'll be with the Washington Post. We'll be covering a few things. Oh yeah, and I'm definitely going to bring up Ed Martin.
Yeah,
I've got a boner for Ed Martin, but not the good kind of boner. I got the angry kind of boner for Ed Martin. That's an image. That'll last with you till Friday. Anything else that we should share? Or is that it? I think that's it.
I'm just wondering what the chances of us doing a Kill Tony and having everyone dress up as Vance, Zelensky, and Trump for PEP 200. Okay,
unless I can be Zelensky and I can just turn up in a black sweatshirt and track
what you're
pants.
in now.
yeah. He's a bit wintry for me though, unfortunately. But if we could do this in winter, I'll do Zelensky dress then. Yeah. I think we're okay in our normal clothes. I'll see you on Thursday when we record.
Will do.
See you guys on Friday when we put it out. Until then, stay peppy.
Second podcast of the week where Marty Nerdy for our pod.